Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was born 5 years earlier and was a prodigy part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The evening had begun like any other, quiet and tranquil. For many in Konohagakure, life had been quiet ever since the Third Shinobi World War had ended a few years prior. It was October 10th, and tonight would be a night that would live in infamy and tragedy. The civilians and shinobi could only look on in horror as a monstrosity appeared out of nowhere and began to devastate their home. A monstrosity with 9 tails. The evacuations had begun immediately. The elderly and young rushed to the shelters. A great colored barrier prevented the creature from encroaching further into the village. The frustration evident on the faces of a group of recently promoted jonin. Kurenai Yuhi, Mado Gai, Asuma Sarutobi and Kakashi Hatake could only express their frustration at not being able to help. They'd been ordered to remain outside the barrier by the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. He had also charged them with the safekeeping of a young boy. Stood in front of Kurenai with her arms wrapped protectively around him was a young blonde-haired boy still in his night clothes. He was the firstborn child and son of the Yandaime Hokage. His name was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. And just like the young jonin around him, he too was anxious. He had yet to see either of his parents, and he was scared. It wasn't supposed to be like this. His 5th birthday was weeks away and he would soon have a little brother or sister to dote over, but now there was a monster destroying everything it could. He couldn't hold his emotions back any longer as he began to cry. Hearing the quiet sobs from the boy in her arms, she held him closer. "Don't worry, Naruto-chan, your Two-san and Ka-chan will be fine," Kurenai reassured him, pushing down the very real fear and anxiety she herself was feeling. Both of her parents were on the other side of the barrier too. Looking around, her eyes fell on a boy perhaps 12 to 13 years old. He too was crying. Another jonin had brought him here just before the barrier had gone up. She didn't know who he was, but she couldn't miss the prominent horizontal scar he had across the bridge of his nose. Another deafening roar yanked her attention back to the other side of the barrier. Minato was having a terrible night. It was supposed to have been a happy one. His wife had gone into labor. They were both beside themselves with joy at welcoming a second child into their young family. Then everything had started to go downhill. A mysterious figure with a mask that only revealed a single eye. He'd forced Minato to focus all his attention on getting his newborn son Rezano to safety. He was gone for just a few moments, but it was long enough. By the time Minato had returned, the figure had freed the 9-tailed fox. And although he'd been able to wrest control of the Kyuubi away from the unknown figure, it had meant the demon had wrought a terrible toll on the village. The man with the mask had since disappeared, leaving the blonde-haired Hokage to combat the fox alone. Thankfully, he wasn't alone for long, as he was reinforced by Hiruzen Sarutobi and 2 of his students, Tsunade Senju and Jiraiya. Tsunade was in the village to help deliver Rezano just as she had for Naruto. And it was just sheer good fortune that Jiraiya happened to be in the village at the time. And despite having just given birth and just having had the 9 tails drawn out of her, Kushina was still standing and able to assist, displaying the stamina only an Uzumaki possessed. "Minato, I hope you have a plan," Hiruzen said, landing next to the young man he picked to replace him as leader of Konoha, Kushina quickly appearing next to them both, her breathing labored. "We have to seal it again, but we can't seal it within Kushina again. I fear it would kill her. Which leaves only one option," he finished somberly. He quickly vanished in a flash of yellow light before reappearing again with a small bundle in his arms, only a small face visible. Handing Rezano over to Hiruzen, "I've already placed one of my kunai on the plateau behind the Hokage monument. Get everybody else there. I'll ensure our unwelcome guest is present." With that, he shot towards the orange demon currently being distracted by Tsunade and Jiraiya. Appearing behind the fox's head, they both quickly vanished. Hiruzen quickly brought the 2 Sannin up to speed. Tsunade carrying Kushina whilst also pouring chakra into her. Her adamantine chains would be crucial in restraining the beast. The 4 arrived on the plateau to find Minato dodging the fox's claws and tails, buying time. With the fox's back to them, Kushina unleashed her adamantine chains across the demon's body, driving it into the ground. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade bit into their thumbs before slamming their hands into the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu, summoning technique. From the great clouds of smoke appeared a massive toad and a slug. The great toad Gamabunta immediately threw himself on top of the Kyuubi, aiming to keep it pinned to the ground. "Katsuyu, place a part of yourself on Kushina. I'll channel my chakra into her through you. We need to maintain those chains," Tsunade ordered, the black lines across her face signifying she'd released her Sozo Seze, creation rebirth. "Hi, Tsunade-sama," the great slug replied, a small part of her breaking away and headed towards the red-haired woman while the rest moved to help restrain the fox further. Minato reappeared next to Hiruzen, taking his son into his arms while performing a series of hand seals, a small altar appearing next to him that he placed Rezano on top of. The fox tried to roar again, but a large black pole in Hiruzen's hands came down hard atop the fox's head, its jaws slammed shut with a crack. With the fox restrained, Kushina, Hiruzen, Tsunade and Jiraiya each stood at 90 degrees angles from one another, forming a square around the fox. Realizing their intentions to seal it away again, the fox's thrashing only increased, its claws gouging chunks out of the ground. The four, now in position, began weaving hand seals, and a great net emerged above them as all four shouted Kekai Shiho Fujin, four-corner sealing barrier. Together they began lowering it. Minato himself was still stood next to the altar, ready to perform the Hack no Fuin Shiki, 8 trigram sealing style, the moment the net enclosed their orange foe. The net got lower and lower, but Minato was concerned. Kushina was fading fast. Having to maintain her chains, and her corner of the seal was draining her chakra faster than Tsunade could replace it. With the chains weakening, the fox began making headway in its desperate attempts to be free. It seemed like it would be only moments before Kushina's chains failed, the net now so close to entrapping the fox fully. But then the fox stopped thrashing. It was still. Utterly baffled, Minato followed its gaze, and not 10 feet from the fox's maw was a child. The child didn't look any older than Naruto, Minato thought. He too was perplexed by the young boy's sudden appearance. But the child showed no fear as he stared down the most powerful of the Biju. Sensing their opportunity, Kushina withdrew her chakra chains as the net enclosed around the orange-furred creature, as each of the four of them drove a kunai into the ground, completing the seal. The next step now his responsibility. As Minato spoke, Hack no Fuin Shiki, with his words, the fox quickly lost its physical form as it became a cloud of chakra that streamed into Rezano's stomach. Soon the seal was complete. The Uzumaki swirl with 8 trigrams around it displayed on the child. "I'm sorry, Rezano," he uttered as Kushina appeared by his side, picking up her child and holding him close. She was on the brink of collapse with almost no chakra left. "Who's the kid?" Jiraiya asked, pointing to the small boy that had stunned the Kyuubi. "I haven't the faintest idea, sensei. He just appeared and stared down the Kyuubi," Minato replied as Hiruzen knelt down in front of the mysterious child. "And who might you be?" the elder Sarutobi asked. "Try one," the child replied neutrally. "Where are your parents?" "Try. I have none." "Are you from the village?" "I don't know." The confused look on the child's face had grown with each question. "Well, try. Why don't you come with us, and we'll see if we can find your family," Hiruzen reassured him. He assumed the child was just confused and shocked by the night's events. Taking the child's hand, he led him towards the others, who themselves were preparing to get Kushina and Rezano to the hospital. Konoha Hospital. Kushina was laying a hospital bed with Rezano in her arms. "She's utterly exhausted, but bar the bumps and bruises, she's fine. Her Uzumaki heritage will see to her recovery," Tsunade declared, much the assembled group's relief, having given Kushina a once-over. "Thank you, Tsunade," Minato said, his voice relieved. He had highshined all of them to the hospital. Upon their arrival, he'd broken the news to Hiruzen that he'd been unable to save his wife Biwako. Subsequently, he'd gone to find his son Asuma, and Jiraiya had gone to retrieve Naruto. Minato was looking at the young boy sat on another hospital bed. The child had half black, half red hair that reached down to his shoulder blades and was tied back in a manner similar to a hyuga. He had a single red-colored bang framing the right-hand side of his face and a black bang on the left. His eyes were a deep green emerald surrounded by onyx. He wore a simple black shirt and black pants with nothing on his feet. "What shall we do with you, child?" Minato mused. Tsunade appeared next to him. "I can take a blood sample to trace his family," the blonde Sannin suggested. Minato nodded in agreement. Tsunade knelt down in front of him. "I'm going to take a blood sample from you so we can find out who your family are, okay?" "I understand," he acknowledged without a flicker of emotion. Minato couldn't put his finger on it, but there was something different about the boy in front of him. Tsunade pushed a syringe into Tri's forearm, just below the elbow. The child didn't flinch in the slightest as the needlepoint broke through the skin. Pulling back her thumb, Tsunade drew blood into the glass vial. Withdrawing the syringe, she replacing it with a piece of cotton wool, moving Tri's hand over to hold the wool in place while the small hole the needle made coagulated. With her sample in hand, she left the room, heading for the hospital's personnel and birth records. The hospital was packed, dealing with the hundreds of injured. The dead were still being recovered and likely would be for days. Early estimates had put the total casualty count at several hundred, shinobi and civilian. Tsunade weaved her way through packed corridors. Thankfully, she didn't have far to go before she reached her destination. Opening the door to an empty room, she grabbed an identification scroll, opened it, and dripped a few drops of blood onto it, revealing all the information the records had on the child called Tri. "What?" she said in confusion. Naruto rushed down the hospital hallway, yanking the door open. "Ka-chan? Tusan?" he said, desperately searching for his parents. Jiraiya had already reassured him they were both okay, but Naruto had to see them with his own eyes. The door now open, he could see his Tusan stood next to the bed his Ka-chan was asleep on. He rushed towards his father, who opened his arms, picking his son up. Don't worry, Naruto-chan, your Ka-chan will be fine, she's just really tired, so you need to be quiet so you don't wake her, okay? Minato reassured his son. Naruto nodded in agreement. Okay, Tusan, he replied as his eyes were drawn towards the small face poking out of a blanket in Kushina's arms. Naruto-chan, meet your brother Rezano. Gently placing his son down on the bed next to the two sleeping figures, Naruto placed a finger on his new brother's cheek, gently stroking it. Hi Rezano-chan, I'm your Ni-chan, he said lovingly, getting smiles from everyone in the room. He could see the blonde hairs on his head just like him and Tusan. His eyes were a clear blue unlike his and Ka-chan's violet. He also noticed the whisker-like marks on both cheeks. Is my Naruto-chan introducing himself to my Rei-chan? A weak female voice whispered. Naruto looked up from his brother to see his mother's eyes open lovingly, looking over her two children's first interaction. Ka-chan! He squeaked, just about remembering to be quiet lest he woke his new brother, as he quickly wrapped his arms around his mother. I was so scared, Ka-chan, Naruto said into her neck, his emotions getting the better of him. I know, Naruto-chan, but it's okay. Naruto sat up again, wiping away the stray tears, now with a determined look in his eyes. I'll never let anyone hurt you again, Ka-chan. I'm going to become a strong shinobi like Tusan, he declared. Kushina smiled at her son. I know you will, Naruto-chan. Kushina's eyes were quickly drawn to the boy sat on the bed opposite, his chin supported by his hands as he stared at the floor. Minato, who is the child? Kushina asked her husband, causing Naruto to spin around, bringing the black and red-haired child into view. We don't know, all we do know is that his name is Tri. We found him on the plateau, he just appeared out of nowhere in front of the Kyuubi. Tsunade's currently looking through the records to find out who his family are. Minato explained. Try, Kushina gently called, waking the boy from his daze as he looked over at her. Lifting an arm invitingly, can you come here for me please? She asked. Without a word, Try slipped down from the bed and walked over to her side. She looked deep into his onyx and emerald eyes, a smile appearing on her face. She felt a connection with this mysterious child. The door opened again as Tsunade returned, a large scroll in his hand. Were you able to find anything on the Gaki? Jiraiya asked, earning him a glare from Try, the debut of any emotion the child had displayed. Well, he doesn't like you, does he, Jiraiya? Tsunade noted. As for who he is, I have no idea. He has no relatives on record. His blood did, however, reveal him to be an Uzumaki, Kushina said, interrupting the Sannin. A look of surprise spread across Tsunade's face. That's right, how did you know? She asked. Kushina only smiled. I just knew, the moment I looked into his eyes I knew he was an Uzumaki. The descendant of a survivor from Yuzushiogakure? Kakashi suggested. Possibly, the remnants of the Uzumaki clan were scattered to the wind after Yuzushiogakure fell, Tsunade replied. It doesn't, however, explain the rest of his ancestry. Drawing more intrigued looks from across the room, she turned the scroll around so they could see while she spoke. He has Uchiha blood in him as well. This revelation stunned the room. The Uchiha clan didn't let any of its descendants outside of the clan, and breeding with others from outside of the clan was very rare. Terrified of the possibility of the Sharingan serving another. That would explain the onyx scare of his eyes and the black half of his hair. The red hair lends further credence to his Uzumaki ancestry too. Kakashi mused, looking closely at the child's facial features. Does this mean he could manifest the Sharingan? Shizen wondered out loud. Tsunade shook her head. No, I don't think so. Whoever his Uchiha ancestor was, it was several generations ago. It nevertheless leaves us with the decision of what to do with him if we can't find any family, Minato added. He stays with us, Kushina said softly, taking one of Tri's hands in one of her own. Don't bother, put him in one of the village's orphanages. Your attention should be on your actual children, especially after tonight, Jiraiya said, dismissing Kushina's declaration, which earned him another glare, this time from the child and Kushina. Thank you for your input, Jiraiya, Kushina replied. Now, shut up, she bluntly finished. Turning to her husband, he stays with us, Minato, she repeated. Would we be able to split enough time between the three? We had trouble figuring out whether we would for two, he asked. I can babysit both if need be, Shizen spoke up. She had already agreed to babysit Naruto when needed following the birth of Minato and Kushina's second child, so her circumstances wouldn't change that much. Minato mulled on the issue. This child intrigues me and I can't figure out why, but... Is this what you really want, Kushina? Minato asked, receiving a firm nod. There's something about this child that calls to me, I don't know what. But he is the reason we all walked away tonight, and since it seems he has no family, then by Kami, I'll give him one. Try, are you happy with this? He asked the boy who still held Kushina's hand. This time he received a slow series of nods. All right then, Minato said with an air of finality in his voice. Despite giving birth, despite having a bijou drawn out of her, Kushina was able to go home the following evening. She was still exhausted, but other than that was absolutely fine. The shallow cuts and bruises she'd accrued had already healed. She wasn't the only one who was tired. Naruto refused to go to sleep while his Ka-chan was in the hospital. Minato had multiple shadow clones out in the village counting the cost. Tri had just stared off into space, barely moving a muscle. Rezano was perhaps the only one not ready to drop. Minato opened the door to let everyone in. When he'd last shut this door 24 hours ago, it had been him, Kushina and Naruto that had left. Now on their return, there were 5, not counting Shizen who'd very kindly offered to carry a dead on his feet Tri while Minato carried Naruto. Everyone had just managed to make their way into the dining room when one of Minato's clones returned. He had dispatched it to get food since none of them was in a position, never mind the mood to actually cook anything. The clone deposited the food on the table. Could you find out some clothes that will fit Tri? The original asked. The meal that followed was one of the quietest the household had known. Barely a word was spoken before they all made their way to their beds. They put Naruto to bed first, then put Rezano in his cot in the master bedroom. Finally, Kushina guided Tri to one of their spare bedrooms. Thankfully their house had 5 bedrooms, so they weren't hurting for space. Minato's clone had found out some of the clothes that Naruto didn't often wear, if at all. Opening the door to the plain room, furnished only with a bed, a closet, a small desk and set of drawers. Kushina sat him down on the edge of the bed before sitting next to him. Placing an arm around his shoulders, "This will be your room from now on, okay?" She got a nod in reply. "You'll have to make do with some of Naruto's spare clothes for a few days until we get you some of your own, okay?" Another nod. Kushina could see his face was beginning to contort, emotion desperately seeking release. He also started to shake. She held him closer before speaking softly into his ear. "I want you to get used to this room. Because I intend to keep you here with us. So from now on I want you to think of me as your Ka-chan, okay?" That proved to be the breaking point as the emotionless mask shattered, the tears soon streaming down his face. It was through the tears she heard the first words he'd say to her, "Thank you Ka-chan," barely more than a whisper, and choked out through sobs. But she heard him all the same. It took her nearly half an hour to bring his crying to an end. At the end of which he'd fallen asleep. With what energy she had left, Kushina managed to get him onto the bed. She slowly crept out of the room and closed the door. "And with your signatures added, it's official," Shizen cheered, double-checking the document in her hands. Minato smiled, one hand on Naruto's head while he held Rezano in the other arm while Kushina was on the brink of bouncing off the walls in excitement, as she wrapped Tri in a bear hug. It had been nearly 3 months since the Kyuubi incident. Most of the repairs to the village had been completed. It had been hectic in the Uzumaki Namikaze household. The arrival of a newborn and the taking in a third had proved exhausting for Minato and Kushina, but they'd loved it. They loved their 2 sons deeply, but they had room for more. They had come to love having Tri with them. But no one had come forward to claim him. Tri himself was a quandary, a polite and kind-hearted boy. It had taken a while to get him to emerge from his shell, but as the weeks went by he'd smiled often and spoke more. They'd discovered his intelligence, his extremely courteous temperament, his love for ramen. He was an Uzumaki after all. He and Naruto interacted as if they'd known each other for years. Naruto had treated him as if he were a brother. And with the paperwork now signed, he was exactly that. Tri's full adoption was completed. It wasn't even a decision that had to think hard on. Naruto loved the prospect of another brother. Minato and Kushina had already come to regard him as a son in all but name. And now he would take the name that rightfully his. He was now Uzumaki Tri, the son of the Yondaime Hokage Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina. "There you two are. I've been trying to track you two down for nearly an hour. We've already had the discussion about how you're not supposed to just vanish like that." Shizen half-heartedly scolded her 2 charges. It was one of the mornings where she watched over Tri and Naruto. She'd been doing it pretty much ever since Tri started living with the Hokage family. She had offered after all. It had been a few weeks since Tri's formal adoption, and she'd stopped by the Uzumaki Namikaze household as usual. It was only after a brief chat with Kushina that she'd discovered they had both vanished. She'd eventually tracked them down to a nearby park where they were sitting on the grass under the shade of a tree. Both had a book in their hands. "Sorry Shizen-chan and hi Tuntun," Naruto replied, scratching the back of his head with a wide grin on his face, the small pig in her arms oinking in reply. "We were never really alone Shizen and I-chan," Tri said, never looking up from his book but with an arm raised pointing towards the top of a building across the park behind her. Shizen followed the trajectory of his arm and sure enough, she could just make out a figure in the shadows. A figure with an animal face mask. How did you know the ANBU was there? She inquired. Again he didn't look up from the book, all she got was a shrug of the shoulders. I tell you not to disappear on me again like that, but I'm thinking it won't make any difference, she said more to herself than either boy. Sighing as she sat down in front of them. What are you both reading? She inquired. Naruto answered by lifting up his book to show Shizen the name. An Introduction to Chakra. I see. Your parents said you'd begun to take an interest? How are you getting on? She said, inquiring as to their progress. Her question brought a look of frustration on Naruto's face. I don't understand some of the words, the blonde admitted. And you try, Kun? On good Shizen and Ai-chan, he replied, lifting his copy of the book, showing her he was well into the book. Okay then, if it's okay with you, I'll help Naruto, she said, shuffling across behind Naruto as Tri nodded. Lifting him into her lap, she began helping him. Any words he couldn't read, she'd teach him to say. Any words he didn't understand, she'd explain. Tuntun meanwhile settled down against Tri's leg. As the three red families came and went in the park, others walking by going about their days. She guided him through the pages, explaining what chakra was, its purpose, and how a shinobi utilized it. She also taught him some of the simpler hand seals, again explaining their purpose. And the young boy had quickly understood most of what she taught him. She concluded that the best ways of teaching Naruto were through verbal, physical, and social means. She already knew that Naruto could get frustrated if he didn't understand something. Having someone there to explain things in a different way was of great benefit to him. And that's how it continued for the next hour or so before Tri closed the book. Having finished, done, he quietly said to himself. Shizen looked up to see Tri practicing hand seals. Ram, dog, monkey, hare, horse, bird, dragon, tiger, snake, boar, rat, and ox. She was astounded to see that he'd already learned all 12, including the correct hand movements and positions. The slightest of movements on top the building opposite told Shizen that Tri had also piqued the interest of the ANBU assigned to watch over the boys. Tri, how long have you been practicing hand seals for? I've only just started, Shizen and Ai-chan, he answered. And you already know all 12? Yes. The book talks about a few more specialist hand seals and makes a vague reference to one-handed seals. But it doesn't show them. You don't need to worry about one-handed seals, Tri-kun. There are very few jonin who can perform them. Okay, Shizen and Ai-chan, Tri replied before he took a deep breath and forming the ram seal. Tri, are you sure you're ready to try that? Shizen asked. Yes, Shizen and Ai-chan. It's the only thing this book has left to teach me. Then explain to me and Naruto what chakra is, Shizen asked, wanting to test his retentive skills. Still sat in his meditative pose with the ram seal still formed in his hands, he began to speak. Chakra is created through the mixture of spiritual and physical energy. It is the foundation of all jutsu regardless of field. A shinobi can through practice learn to manipulate their chakra through their chakra circulatory system. Furthermore, the human body has 361 chakra points. It is to these points that a shinobi can focus their chakra. Shizen was surprised. He'd explained it superbly. Wanting to pry further, superb, now explain what hand seals are and their purpose. Hand seals are a fundamental element of all schools of jutsu except taijutsu. They allow a shinobi to focus their chakra in the correct quantities to successfully execute a technique. This ultimately is their purpose. A shinobi uses hand seals to help manipulate their chakra in the manner they require. The more advanced the technique, the more hand seals tend to be required, he explained. Shizen could only shake her head whilst smiling. His ability to assimilate and utilize what he's only just learnt is impressive. Very good, Tri-kun. Naruto-chan, sit like Tri-kun is and form the ram seal like this, she said, showing him the hand placement. After tweaking his thumb placement slightly, he was ready. Okay, you two, since I and Naruto-kun have just finished covering chakra and hand seals in the book, and you've just explained it to me, we're going to try and awaken your chakra. Keep in mind it may take you a few tries to find it. First, watch me, she finished as she too assumed the meditative pose. Both boys watched as Shizen slowly drew out her chakra. They could both feel it radiating from her before she ceased. Did you both feel it? She asked, receiving 2 nods. Okay, now you try. Close your eyes and look deep inside yourselves. You're looking for a warm sensation. It's normally the pit of your stomach. If you can feel it, focus on it and try slowly drawing on it. Pull it to the surface. They sat there in silence for a few minutes, then she felt the chakra flow brush against her. Steadily it grew stronger, plateauing before receding. Naruto had found his first. He opened his eyes again, a wide grin on his face. I did it, Shizen-chan, he cheerfully exclaimed. Shizen took note of the chakra Naruto had generated. It was more than she had expected. Well done, Naruto-chan. Tri-kun, how are you doing? She inquired of the quiet boy with bicolored hair. Okay, Shizen and Ai-chan, I don't think it's in the pit of my stomach, so I'm looking elsewhere, he replied, his pose not budging. A few seconds of silence passed before he quietly spoke again. I think I found it. He slowly began to pull. The ANBU on the roof was really paying attention now. First Naruto had awoken his chakra at the first attempt, and now she was waiting to see if Tri would do the same. The ANBU herself thought back to when she'd first awoken her chakra. It had taken nearly an hour to find and draw it out. Yet it had taken the young blonde boy less than 5 minutes. She'd also noticed the amount of chakra Naruto displayed. Then the wave hit her. It was somewhat brief, lasting barely a few seconds, but the ANBU and Shizen both were astonished. The chakra simply poured out of Tri. It had been enough to startle Tuntun, the micro pig practically jumping into Naruto's lap. Both watching ninjas were dumbfounded. 5-year-olds shouldn't be able to do that, both thought as Tri opened his eyes, a rare wide smile on his face. How was that, Shizen and Ai-chan? It took the medic Nin a few seconds to actually manage a response. Very good, Tri-kun. I'm amazed both of you achieved this so quickly. And good timing too, she said, looking at the sun, already partway through setting. It's time to get you two home, she declared, standing up and brushing the dust off of her clothes. Her two charges quickly doing the same. Tuntun jumping into Naruto's arms, briefly nuzzling the boy's neck. Ah! Naruto exclaimed, Tuntun, that tickles! They left the park, making their through the many streets of Konoha, their ANBU guards silently going from building top to building top. It was still relatively busy as people finished work or school for the day, all heading for their next destinations. They were nearing the street the two boys lived on when they heard a female voice call out. Shizen-chan. Turning towards the voice, Shizen spotted a woman slowly walking towards her, a young girl, a toddler next to her. The woman wore a white qipao dress with red circular patterns across the bottom. She was fair-skinned and had shoulder-length blonde hair with a single large bang that fell down between her green eyes. The little girl wore a red qipao dress, with a white circular pattern. She shared her mother's green eyes, but instead of blonde, her hair was pink. Mabuki-san, Shizen greeted her old work colleague. Haruno Mabuki used to work alongside Shizen at the hospital as a nurse. She'd taken an extended leave of absence following the birth of her daughter. The two friends shared a brief hug. Babysitting, are we, Shizen-san? Mabuki asked, looking at the two boys at her side. Yep, Mabuki meet Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto and Uzumaki Tri, Shizen replied, point at each of the boys in turn. And this must be Sakura, Shizen waved at the little girl, getting a little wave in reply. Yep, Mabuki said with pride in her voice, 3 already, you'll have to forgive her, she's still a little shy, the blonde woman added, her daughter slightly hidden behind her leg. Sakura looked at each of the 3 strangers, first the woman who gave her a gentle smile, then the blonde boy who gave her a wide grin. And finally, the black and red-haired boy who with a slight smile gave her a short wave, getting a diminutive wave in return. Rushing up the front garden path, barely taking the time to open the door properly before he was in the hall. He less took his sandals off, rather kicked them off at the wall. He was hopping around the hallway trying to get the second one off when Tri and Shizen entered. Ka-chan. Dining room, Nara-chan. Barging through the door, Ka-chan. I awoke my chakra. The blonde loudly exclaimed. Kushina's eyes widened in surprise for a moment before she smiled, put her hands on her hips and leant forward. Oh, is that right? She asked, giving him a half-serious glare. Yeah, me and Tri did it. Both of you, huh? Well, Shizen, am I hearing the truth? Hi, both managed it, and very quickly. Kushina looked at her 2 eldest. She walked over to a cabinet and pulled 2 books out of a drawer. Well, if you've finished the first book, then you'll be needing these. She handed them both a book called The Basics of Chakra Control. But it can wait till tomorrow. Now both of you clean up before dinner, she ordered. Both did as they were asked and rushed off. After they were both out of earshot, Kushina turned to Shizen. How did they do? Naruto needed help with words he either couldn't read or didn't understand. Tri breezed through it without issue, and his ability to recall information is incredible. Naruto was able to awaken his first, and he seems to have large chakra coils, the standard for an Uzumaki. Tri is the oddity. He took a little longer to awaken his, but when he did, she trailed off towards the end. What happened when he awoke his chakra? It flooded out of him. I'd have to check with Tsunade-sama to be sure, but I think his chakra reserves better resemble that of an adult, not a 5-year-old. In addition, he looked unaffected afterwards, not a hint of fatigue. If that's the case, then his chakra control might be an issue, Kushina added. I'm not so sure it will, Kushina-sama. I believe his calmness streak will be of great benefit. After Naruto awoke his chakra and Tri couldn't, there was no frustration, little emotion at all in fact. That and he retains what he learns like a sponge retains water. Kushina thought a moment. I'll inform Minato. Can you keep me up to date on their progress? Hi, Kushina-sama. Thank you, Shizen. Now, would you like to stay for dinner? A week had passed since that day in the park. In the days that followed, Shizen had spoken to both Kushina and Minato about their son's success in awakening their chakra. From there, the two had been introduced to simple chakra exercises. From channeling their chakra at will to balancing things on their fingers using chakra alone. They'd started with light objects, slips of paper and leaves. It had been a difficult first day or two. Naruto had managed to complete the task first. Try seemed to instead push the paper away from his finger instead of hold it. He displayed his calm and collected temperament in the face of these frustrations. Hiruzen's suggestion to test Try to discover how large his chakra reserves were allowed them to discover the issue. Shizen had taken Try to see Tsunade a few days earlier, and her suspicions were quickly confirmed. At 5 years old, Try had the chakra reserves of a highly developed chunin. One of the rules of chakra was the more chakra a shinobi has, the harder it is to control it. As a result, the fledgling training regimes of the boys differed slightly. Try's included more chakra control than Naruto's. Minato and Kushina had both taken a personal role in their son's training when available, introducing them to kunai and shuriken, and much to Naruto's chagrin, the mathematical theories behind their use. It was early afternoon, and Try was at home training while Shizen had taken Naruto to see Tsunade for his chakra medical. 1. Tusan? Minato heard from behind him. Turning his head, he saw Try poking his head around the door. Try-chan, he replied, greeting his son. Try quietly entered the room, shutting the door behind him before sitting down next to him. What can I do for you, Try-chan? He asked. He assumed that his son had finished yet another book on chakra control techniques, and was looking for another. But Try didn't reply. Seeing what had his attention, he noticed Try was staring at what he himself had been doing. Minato had some free time for the first time since October 10th, so he decided to scrub off some of the rust from his Fuinjutsu. Tusan, what is this? The child asked, utterly captivated. I'm practicing my Fuinjutsu, Try-chan. Seeing the look of confusion on his face, he explained. Fuinjutsu is a school of jutsu that allows someone to seal objects, living things, even chakra within other things through the use of various seals. You can also restrict movement and suppress things with seals, he explained. Like a storage scroll? Try asked, earning him a nod. That's right, storage scrolls are one of the easier seals to make. A more advanced version lets you seal objects in a seal placed on your own body. If you have the skill and imagination, you can do almost anything with Fuinjutsu, Minato elaborated. Am I too young to be learning this, Tusan? Try asked. Minato could see the wide-eyed fascination on his face. No, you're not too young, but your handwriting and calligraphy skills need to be really good before you can start learning it. Do you still want me to show you? Try nodded his head vigorously. Minato hadn't ever seen him so excited by something. Minato gave him fresh paper, a pot of ink and a brush. He was already aware Try knew his kanji, so they could move straight onto the neatness element. Try-chan, I want you to write the kanji for fire. Don't worry about speed, focus on making it as neat as possible. Speed will come later, Minato explained. Dipping his brush into the ink, he slowly began the 4 brush strokes needed to write fire. A few seconds later, he was done. Looking over his work, Minato could only find one mistake to point out. After quickly doing so, Try tried again, this time getting it spot on. Then they moved on to water, then earth, and over the next hour, Try managed to perfect over 20 kanji symbols. At the end of their lesson, Minato handed Try a book on level 1 Fuinjutsu. Now, Try-chan, I only want you to practice drawing the seals, okay? Don't try using your chakra with any. I don't want you to hurt yourself. When you think you're ready to test if the seal works, come and see me or Ka-chan, okay? We're both really good at this stuff, Minato said to his son. Okay, Tusan. Unseen by either of them, Kushina had her ear against the door. She'd sent Try to Minato for the next chakra exercise book, but when he hadn't come back, she'd gone to find him. Hearing Minato talking from the other side of the door, she listened in, only smiling as she managed to piece together that her husband was introducing their son to Fuinjutsu. She loved the art of seals as only a true child of Uzushiogakure could. And now another had begun their education in it. With a smile on her face, she hurried back downstairs before Try caught her eavesdropping at the door. 2 years had now passed since Try had been adopted into the Uzumaki Namikaze family. He and Naruto, now age 7, had had a remarkable 24 months. Their shinobi training was going along superbly for both. They displayed ability that belied their years. Minato's decision to increase the minimum age requirement to attend the academy to 8 was the only thing that kept them from attending. So they would have to wait another year. Tsunade, Shizen and Hiruzen had them marked down as one-year wonders. Most prospective children who attend the academy graduate after 2 years, only the best graduated in 1. Only around 5% of all graduates in the past decade had graduated after only their first year. Despite their progress, not all in their lives had been positive. About 6 months into their training, both noticed that their parents gradually spent less and less time training them, less and less time with them, full stop. It upset and frustrated both of them. Many times they'd asked for help with one thing or another, and they'd instead been sent to Shizen or to Hiruzen or Tsunade. Eventually, both simply stopped bothering and went directly to Shizen, Tsunade, Hiruzen. They'd even persuaded Jonin Madogai into helping on occasion with their physical fitness and taijutsu. It was just after one of those infamous Madogai training sessions that we find the two young brothers, on an early spring morning that seemed like any other. It would, however, mark the day the two brothers would meet one of their closest mutual friends. I'm so glad we only have guys training 3 times a week, Naruto groaned. His everything ached. He thought he would get used to the physical punishment that guys training entailed, but the big-eyebrow Jonin kept finding new ways to work them into the ground. Try next to him chuckled, "Oh come on, Naruto. It's necessary if we want to be good shinobi. There are only 12 months left until we enter the academy," Try said to his blonde sibling. Over the past 2 years, their individual personas had developed, and despite looking like contradictions, they complemented one another. Naruto was headstrong and somewhat impulsive, but still kept his mind on task and fought intelligently. Meanwhile, Try had developed a reserved, methodical style that suited medium to long-range combat. Their appearance too had changed. Not just that they were taller, more physically developed as you would expect from being them 2 years older. Although their hair was much the same, their attire had changed quite a bit. Naruto, much to the delight of everyone, had long since abandoned the obnoxious orange garb he once wore, swapping it instead for black and gray. So now he wore black 3/4 pants with bandages around his right knee and a shuriken holster around his right thigh with regular blue sandals on his feet. The orange jacket had been replaced with a form-fitting black shirt with long-sleeved mesh armor underneath. When necessary, he also wore a thin gray jacket on top. The most prominent addition, though, was the tanto Naruto wore over his left shoulder. Try too preferred darker colors. He now wore dark gray 3/4 pants, the hem of which fit tightly around his upper fibula and tibia. Both his knees were reinforced with bandages, with additional bandages around both his ankles underneath his black sandals. He, like Naruto, also wore a black shirt, but he had a high collar that obscured his neck. He also wore mesh armor, although his only extended to the upper forearm. Because dotted across both forearms and hands were seals. Storage seals, weight seals amongst many others. I know they are Try. But Guy-sensei keeps forgetting we aren't adults, Naruto sighed. Though I must admit, the results are noticeable, he added, clenching his fist. Under Guy, their speed, physical strength, and stamina had taken noticeably increased. At least with Guy we actually get training on a regular and consistent basis, he noted bitterly. Try sighed his agreement. Home life was frustrating for both of them. The attention they received from their parents was now limited in the extreme. For the first 6 months or so, things had been fine. They understood their parents led busy lives, their Tusan ran the village, and their Ka-chan had to devote most of her time to Rezano. But both still made time for their 2 eldest when they could, whether it was instructing or training them, or just simply spending time with them. It had now been around 18 months since their parents had taught or trained either of them anything. A visit from Jiraiya had turned it all on its head. Following that visit, Rezano received more and more of his parents' time and attention. And on one of the increasingly rare occasions, when either of them was actually free, they told them they hadn't the time for one reason or another. Neither of them hated Rezano for the time and attention he received. They both understood and loved their younger sibling, but the building frustration and loneliness led them both to resent him. Furthermore, both of them realized that neither parent was doing it consciously. They weren't even aware of the extent to which they were ignoring their 2 eldest. And neither child could decide whether that made it better or worse. They weren't the only ones to notice. Shizen, Tsunade, and Hiruzen had all noticed, ever since the brothers had instead come directly to them for training. But they couldn't inform Minato and Kushina of their ignorant stupidity because the brothers had asked them not to. Suffice to say, none of the 3 adults were impressed. And then a few weeks ago, Kushina had delightfully announced she was pregnant. As a result, Naruto and Try had been caught in 2 minds. On one hand, they were elated to have another brother or their first sister. But they knew that the minuscule amount of attention they might have received was about to be taken away from them entirely. In regard to their feelings towards Jiraiya, in Naruto's mind he had gone from the caring grandfatherly figure he was openly affectionate towards. Now he was polite but cold, showing no positive emotion towards him whatsoever. Try, on the other hand, didn't even bother with polite, he was outright hostile towards the Sannin. The dismissive attitude he displayed the night they'd met instilling an animosity that had only strengthened. Well, it's a positive for us both. We get stamina and taijutsu training from the best. And he gets practice in teaching and training others. Remember, he said he wants to become a Jonin instructor in a few years, Try said, spinning a shuriken on his index finger. Guy's desire to instruct a genin team was the primary reason he'd so eagerly agreed to train the 2 and 3 mornings a week. He did just that. And while Guy could be a tough teacher, not afraid to be heavy-handed during spars, he would compliment when appropriate. Today he'd shown them a sheer rock face not far from the village. His challenge to them was to climb it one-handed without using chakra, whether it took them a day or a year to complete. It had taken them nearly 4 hours to climb it with both hands and chakra, not to mention the number of times they nearly fell off. And now their arms felt as if they were going to drop off. How long do you think it's going to take to climb that cliff one-handed? Naruto asked his brother. A while, Tri chuckled. They were still walking back to the village, through the endless trees that comprised the forests around Konohagakure. Ahead of them was a clearing, and from the sounds of metal thudding against wood, it sounded like somebody was training. After sharing a quick look, they decided to be nosy. Quietly making their way to the break in the tree line, Naruto trying his absolute best to be as silent as possible. Tri smiled, and rolling his eyes at his siblings' antics, he instead chose to lean against a tree in plain sight. The person who'd caught their interest was about their age. His shoulder-length black hair was tied back in a ponytail, while his entire outfit was black except his gray sandals. The black-haired child was moving quickly, jumping and flipping while throwing shuriken. The sharp metal discs all hit their mark dead on, even the targets that were hidden behind trees. He landed back on the ground to an applause. Turning around, he saw a black and red-haired kid leaned against the tree clapping. Well thrown, Uchiha-san, he complimented, raising an eyebrow at his recognizing him as an Uchiha. The fan symbol on your back, he explained, walking out into the clearing towards him. Anyways, I'm being rude, allow me to introduce myself, he said, extending his hand. My name is Uzumaki Tri, he said. Uchiha Itachi, he replied, as the two shook hands. So is your companion going to introduce themselves, or are they going to continue hiding in the bush? Itachi asked Tri, both laughing as a sweat drop appeared on a nearby bush. Slowly Naruto emerged from the bush, a sheepish grin on his face. Sorry, I'm Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, he said. Well, it's nice to meet you, Naruto-san, Itachi replied. How long have you been in training, Itachi-san? Tri asked, his gaze again on the wooden target riddled with shuriken. Since I was 5, so just over 2 years, Tri-san, the Uchiha answered, his eyes on the shuriken still spinning on Tri's finger. That makes 3 of us then, Tri said, a flick of his wrist letting the shuriken fly, it too embedding itself in the wooden target some 30 feet away. What fields are you both training in? Itachi asked the two brothers. Naruto replied first. Meito Gai-sensei and Tsunade Bachan teach us taijutsu. Shizen Nei-chan teaches us chakra control, and Hiruzen Sarutobi teaches us ninjutsu as well as fuinjutsu, Naruto stating, ticking each off with a finger. Okay, Itachi replied, not really getting much information from his words. Our taijutsu teachings include Meito Gai's Goken, strong fist, and Senju Tsunade's Senju style. Shizen-chan, for the most part, works on improving our chakra control because we both have abnormally large chakra reserves for our age. Our fuinjutsu training is just learning seals, while our ninjutsu training has for the most part been learning the techniques they would otherwise teach you in the academy. We may have to force the issue when it comes to chakra nature manipulation, Tri elaborated. Itachi nodded. How about yourself, Itachi-san? Tri inquired. My training, for the most part, is the standard Uchiha styles in shurikenjutsu and taijutsu. Although I have begun forays into Uchiha Katan ninjutsu and genjutsu, the Uchiha finished. Katan? Tri said, his voice intrigued. Would you be willing to demonstrate, Itachi-san? Tri had noticed the singed grass in parts of the clearing when he'd arrived and was curious to what had caused them. He smiled briefly when Itachi nodded. Turning to face the clearing, he wove a few hand signs. Katan, Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique. Itachi spoke as a fireball formed in front of him before releasing it into the ground ahead of him, avoiding the rather flammable trees. Impressive, Itachi-san, Tri again complimented the Uchiha. Thank you, Tri-san. You mentioned you had yet to try nature ninjutsu. Does that mean neither of you knows your affinities? He inquired. Yeah, we haven't asked yet, Naruto replied. Asked? I'm surprised your parents haven't helped you with it, it takes seconds. Speaking of which, both of your parents are really strong, aren't they? Yet you never mentioned them earlier, do they not assist in training you? Itachi inquired. The immediate looks of frustration on both their faces suggested to him he'd strayed into touchy territory. No, they don't. They are otherwise occupied. Tri answered, no emotion in his voice. Itachi could sense there was more to the issue, but decided prying further wasn't a good idea. So, Itachi spoke, breaking the nervous silence. What were you planning on doing for the rest of the day? He asked, deciding it was best to move the discussion to another topic. Pretty much what you are doing, Itachi-san, Naruto answered. Well then, shall we? the Uchiha asked, going to retrieve his shuriken. The brothers looked at one another, both nodding. That evening, Naruto and Tri were walking home. They bid farewell to their new Uchiha friend with an agreement to meet again the following day. In just a few hours, Itachi had been able to point out a few minor flaws in their shuriken technique. Naruto, who had taken to taijutsu, was able to provide Itachi with a few tips on his taijutsu form, while Tri was able to help with the efficiency of his chakra manipulation and control. What's the plan then, Tri? Having seen Itachi display of nature transformation ninjutsu had made the siblings decide it was about time they added it to their learning. Toussaint will almost certainly still be at his office at work, while Kaa-chan will be downstairs with Rizano-chan. You distract them while I find some chakra paper. Say I've gone to the bathroom or something. Then in the morning after we've found our chakra natures, I'll find us some ninjutsu to start learning. Tri explained. Naruto nodded in understanding. What affinities do you think we'll have? Naruto wondered aloud. I've no idea about me, but Kaa-chan is Suiton and Toussaint is Futon. So you'll probably be one of those. If you're really lucky, you may have both. Naruto was getting excited now. He looked on the brink of jumping halfway across the village. A few minutes later they were home. We're home, Naruto half shouted across the house. In the dining room they heard a quick nod from Naruto as he headed to the dining room, while Tri shined upstairs, a trick Hiruzen Sunasuma had shown them a few months ago before he'd departed for the capital. His destination was their father's office. Opening the door quietly, he found it empty as expected. All the drawers and storage scrolls were labeled and organized alphabetically. It made finding things very easy. Quickly tracking down the storage scroll labeled chakra paper, Tri took it out, unrolled it, and channeled his chakra into it. With a puff of smoke, a few sheets of chakra paper appeared. He quickly put the paper in one of the storage seals on his right wrist before placing the scroll back in its rightful place. He completed the plan by actually going to the bathroom, washing his hands, and then heading down to join his family in the dining room. Evening, Tri-chan, he heard his Kushina call as he stepped into the dining room. Evening, Ka-chan, hi Rizano-chan, he said, waving at his younger brother. Sitting down at the table, but not before booping Rizano lightly on the nose, eliciting a babyish giggle from the 2-year-old. Naruto-chan was just telling me you both made a new friend today. Uchiha household. So, come on then, Itachi, who did you meet today? For some reason, the anticipation's getting to me. Mikoto Uchiha cheerily asked her eldest son. They were in the midst of dinner when Itachi had mentioned he'd met 2 kids his own age. For a while now, Mikoto had noticed her son's solitary attitude, especially over the past year or two. He didn't interact with many people. Only herself, Sasuke, and fellow clansman Shursui regularly interacted with Itachi. Their names are Tri and Naruto, Itachi replied, swallowing a mouthful of rice. The names took Mikoto by surprise. Truthfully, she was delighted. Her and Kushina were lifelong friends as well as rivals, always seeking to one-up the other. She'd wondered for years whether their children would in some way be drawn to one another. And now it seems they were. It's nice to see you making friends, Itachi, Mikoto smiled while wiping the mess from around her second son Sasuke's mouth. Is Toussaint working late again, Ka-chan? Itachi asked, looking at the chair at the end of the table, which once again was empty. Yeah, looks like another all-nighter, Mikoto replied bitterly. The lack of time her husband Fugaku, the leader of the Uchiha clan, spent at home was a source of great frustration for her. Doubly so since on the rare occasions he was home he practically ignored Sasuke in favor of Itachi. I see, Itachi said neutrally. Are your new friends training to be shinobi like you too? Mikoto asked. Itachi nodded as he chewed. Yeah, they're both pretty good. They train with Mato Gai-san, Tsunade-sama, and her assistant Shizen-san. Mikoto was half paying attention as she was tending to Sasuke, who decided to throw his rice everywhere. But she became confused. Did they not mention Minato or Kushina among those who train them? I did ask. But they said they were too busy. I think there's more to it, but I didn't want to be rude, Itachi said. The confusion only grew on Mikoto's face. She knew for a fact that Minato and Kushina deeply loved their children, so why weren't they involved in their training? She was pulled out of her thoughts by a chair dragging across the floor. Itachi had stood and was pushing the chair back under the table. I'm feeling tired, Ka-chan, so I'm gonna go to bed. Okay, sweetie. Good night, I'll see you in the morning, she replied. Her attention still focused on getting rice into Sasuke's mouth instead of on the floor. Be good for Ka-chan, Sasuke, Itachi asked, lightly tapping his younger brother on the forehead with his middle and index fingers. Uzumaki Namake's household. How do we use the paper, Tri? Naruto asked as he rubbed the paper in his hands between his fingers. Kushina had been delighted at finding out her children had befriended the eldest of her closest friend and rival. She had also proclaimed their eternal rivalry would continue through their children, which earned her some concerned looks from Tri and Naruto. Both had quickly escaped to Naruto's room, having quickly made themselves scarce following dinner. Naruto's room was no different to that of most 7-year-old children. A bed accompanied by a bedside cabinet, a wardrobe and chest of drawers. The floor was a comfy carpet, and there was a small desk in the corner. But pride of place went to Naruto's giant bean bag, a gift from Shizen on his 6th birthday. Channel some of your chakra into it, Naruto. How it reacts determines your affinity. If it becomes wet, it's Suiton; if it splits, it's Futon; it burns, then it's Katon; it crumbles, if it's Doton; and if it crinkles, then it's Raiton, Try explained, his brother near mesmerized by the plain slip of paper. You go first, Naruto-kun. We have an idea of what yours will be. Thusly Naruto channeled his chakra into the paper. The anticipation was palpable. What happened next wasn't what either expected. What? Both quietly exclaimed. Itachi couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. They both explained it to him already, but he had to ask again. He had to make sure. Can you repeat that? I think I misheard. Flashback. What? Both quietly exclaimed after one end of the paper and Naruto's hand became wet. They assumed therefore that Naruto's affinity was Suiton. But before either could speak, the other end of the paper began crumbling, falling onto the floor as dirt, then the paper split in half. Does that mean I have? Naruto tried to speak. 3 affinities? Yes, I think it does. Try finished for him. You have Doton, Suiton and Futon. Ka-chan has Suiton and Tusan has Futon, but I don't know where you've gotten Doton from. Doton affinities in Konoha are uncommon, Try explained. Naruto was still open-mouthed in shock. Naruto rediscovered his voice enough to ask, are you going to find out what your affinity is? Try was apprehensive. His family history was a total unknown. Children predominantly inherited their parents' affinities. But for Try that was all blank. He figured, however, that his distant relation to the Uchiha clan might mean a Katon affinity. And that wasn't what happened as he channeled his chakra into the paper. Sure, one end caught fire, but not before the paper split in half, and after the paper had divided, the other half quickly turned soggy. This time it was Try's turn to lose his voice and control of his bottom jaw. End flashback. So you both have 3 affinities? Itachi asked, wanting to make absolutely sure. Yes, Try replied while Naruto firmly nodded. So which are you going to learn to use first? The Uchiha asked, genuinely curious as to which affinity his new friends would look to learn first. We think that the affinity that displays on the paper first is the most prominent affinity, Naruto replied, so I will be learning to use Doton first, but Try will be learning Katon to begin with since Futon is notoriously difficult to learn, the blonde finished. Not to mention dangerous, Try added. But before that, we want to learn to mold and manipulate our chakra into our affinities before we try any jutsu, Try explained. Itachi nodding in understanding. He had learned how to mold Katon chakra before learning any jutsu. It was very unsafe otherwise, as you were quite literally playing with fire in the case of Katon. Unsealing a book on advanced chakra control, Try began reading. Shizen was the first to put his remarkable memory skills to work. He only had to read a scroll or book once. Whatever he read he simply remembered without fail. He would quickly read the entire book, and then hand it over to Naruto. Naruto charged straight towards Itachi. They'd spar while they waited for Try to finish reading. Naruto cocked back his right fist, looking to land a haymaker on Itachi's jaw. The young Uchiha, however, was quicker, deflecting the Namikaze's arm while landing a glancing blow of his own against Naruto's left collarbone. With that, Naruto was immediately forced on the defensive as Itachi turned the momentum of the fight against him. Naruto's taijutsu style was effective, it was compact and got him in closer than most other taijutsu styles were comfortable with, but that was if it landed. Naruto lacked the overall speed needed to bring most of his heavy hits down on his opponents. His primary taijutsu style was a hybrid formed from a mixture of what Tsunade and Guy had taught him. In reality, it meant that Naruto knew 3 taijutsu styles, and it's switching between these 3 styles that allowed him to land his hit, totally catching Itachi out as a left-hand hook crashing off his temple. His quick instincts to jump back the only thing that stopped a leg sweep from leaving him on the floor. Looking up to find a wide grin on Naruto's face as the Hokage's son assumed a defensive stance. Itachi came forward, the momentary ringing in his ears ceasing. He got within a few feet before vanishing. Naruto was caught off guard for just a moment, but it was enough as Itachi reappeared behind him, letting fly with a kick to the kidneys. He vanished again as Naruto tried to turn to face him and was struck in the kidneys again, a punch this time. This happened several more times before Naruto was forced to drop down to one knee, his breathing ragged. Okay, I get it, Itachi. I need to be quicker, Naruto rasped, his admission only getting the slightest of smiles from the stoic Uchiha. Then allow me to assist you, Naruto-san, he said before disappearing again. Their spar continued for near on 3 hours, each taking turns being on offense and defense, learning weaknesses and ironing them out. Done! Try declared, closing the book. Both Itachi and Naruto hit the ground, drawing deep breaths, their spar now at an end. Try looked up, trying to find the sun's position in the sky. Good timing too, lunchtime, he said, channeling chakra into a storage seal on his wrist, a bento box appearing in his hands. Naruto, managing to drag himself off the floor, dived into his pack to retrieve his, much to the amusement of Itachi. Try-san, will you not have to read that book again? He shook his head, quickly swallowing a piece of beef. No, Itachi-san, I'm able to remember the contents of a book or scroll after only reading it once. Shizen and I-chan called it a photographic memory. The Uzumaki explained. Did you find out what you needed? Naruto quickly asked in between mouthfuls. Yes, Katan chakra requires the user to superheat chakra within their stomach before expelling it through their mouth, making sure to ignite it after it had left the body. It didn't, however, elaborate on how you go about superheating the chakra. You can just ask Itachi, can't you? I could, but I need to be able to discover things like this for myself, Try replied, Itachi inclining his head slightly, respecting his new friend's desire to learn himself. He neglected, however, to mention that he himself had been shown how to mold Katan chakra. Naruto just shrugged his shoulders as he continued devouring his food. He didn't quite share his brother's streak for self-discovery. Itachi, how long did it take you to successfully mold Katan chakra? Itachi murmured as he cast his mind back. Around 2 weeks, I believe, although my Two-san guided me through it. Your book is right about needing to create it in your stomach though, Itachi added. Have you tried creating the chakra of any other elements? Naruto asked. Itachi nodded. Yes, I can create Suiton chakra, but I haven't learned any Suiton ninjutsu yet. After listening to his new friend, Try set aside his bento and activated another of his many storage seals, a scroll appearing in his hand. He tossed the scroll at Itachi, who caught it effortlessly. He curiously looked at the scroll, then at Try, his eyes seeking an explanation. The scroll contains a basic Suiton ninjutsu. Naruto will be reading the book. I'll be trying to create Katan chakra. That leaves you on your own, so you need something to do. Earlier that morning, Try once again found himself in his Two-san's personal office. Two-san, of course, had already left for work, and Ka-chan, of course, had her attention focused on Rizano-chan. Try quickly scanned the labels spaced across the many shelves. The elemental ninjutsu had its own section. It was also further organized by how complex the jutsu was. Thus it made it very easy for Try to find what he was looking for. D-rank or C-rank ninjutsu for Katan, Suiton and Doton. They decided to leave Futon for last. The scrolls containing the jutsu weren't protected by any seals, so Try was quickly able to take, or copy them. He was about to leave when another label caught his eye, focusing in on it, Genjutsu. Picking out the first book, the title read An Introduction to and the Fundamentals of Genjutsu. He quickly placed the book in one of his storage seals before leaving the room. I'll work on that in my own time, he thought to himself as he headed downstairs for breakfast. Thank you, Try-san, Itachi said as he opened the scroll and began reading. 1 year later. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Fire release, Great Fireball Technique. Suiton, Teppadama. Water release, Gunshot. The two jutsu clashed before Naruto had to quickly roll to the right as the fireball consumed his water bullet and continued towards him. He hurriedly patted himself down to make sure his clothes hadn't caught fire. You almost got me, Itachi-kun, Naruto grinned, although underneath he was annoyed that Itachi's Katan was still overpowering his Suiton despite the nature disadvantage. Itachi, however, didn't answer. He never did, he simply vanished. Naruto unsheathed his tanto just in time to block a kunai thrown from the right. He had to quickly spin on the spot as Itachi reappeared behind him, another kunai in hand. The two metal blades clashed. Itachi slowly started to get pushed back. I'm the strongest of the three of us, Itachi, you know that, Naruto said through gritted teeth. I do know, Naruto, was the emotionless reply. His replying at all surprised Naruto for the briefest moment before his instincts told him to duck, the heel of a foot skimming past where his head had just been. The follow-up punch, instead of striking flesh, struck wood as Naruto Kawarami to safety. They'd been taking it in turns to fight 2-on-1, and it was Naruto's turn to be the one. The blonde felt this exercise was hardest for him as Try and Itachi seemed to have developed an instinctual understanding of one another, able to act in tandem with one another without having to communicate. Not bad, Try, I only felt the kick coming at the last moment. Naruto commended his brother. But you should always watch where you land, a smirk crossing his face as Try and Itachi looked down to see an explosive tag already burning down. Itachi immediately kawaramied himself while Try just stood there. Naruto could have sworn he heard a low chuckle before the tag went off. His instincts kicked in again as he stepped back, a pair of Saban missing him by millimeters. Not wanting to allow time for more Saban to be thrown, Naruto charged in the direction they'd come from. Bursting through the bushes, he found nothing. He did, however, hear a hiss just above him. Without even looking, he again rushed forward again as the explosive tag detonated, utterly consuming the tree it had been placed on. Naruto cursed as he realized this now meant he'd lost sight of both his opponents. Before both could set upon him, however, he heard a female voice through the trees. Time. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. He had lasted the 15 minutes. Naruto shined back to the clearing. Try and Itachi were already there. In front of them were Tsunade, Shizen and Hiruzen. The three adults who had taught them so much. The 3 8-year-olds by now considered them sensei. They thought similar of Mato Guy, but he was currently absent on a mission. A few weeks after they'd met, Try and Naruto had persuaded their new Uchiha friend to join them in their lessons from the 4 adults, and it had worked wonders for him. They'd both also met one of Itachi's closest friends in Shursui Uchiha, someone Try himself had become good friends with. Hiruzen surveyed the 3 young prospects in front of him. Naruto, appearance-wise he was the absolute blend of Minato and Kushina. He had his father's hair and facial structure, but he had his mother's eyes. He'd also inherited his mother's personality, and had a habit of being boisterous and emotional. His outfit had also developed. He still wore the black 3/4 pants and black shirt. But now, in addition to the sleeved mesh underarmor he wore under the shirt, he also wore mesh armor on both legs, something you'd more likely see on Kunoichi. He now also wore bandages around both wrists, as well his right knee. All of the bandages bore utility seals. His blue sandals also remained, as did the tanto over his left shoulder, now though he had a second tanto strapped horizontally just above his tailbone. Itachi, for the most part, wore the same outfit, black clothing with gray sandals. He had a similar appearance to Konoha's Anbu, minus the mask and tanto. His hair, while still worn in a ponytail, was a little longer now, reaching his shoulder blades, the tear troughs more prominent on his face. The greatest change, however, was Try. He changed his outfit to suit his combat style. His 3/4 pants that cut off just below the knee had gone from gray to navy blue. The rest of his legs from the knee to the ankles were covered in bandages. His sandals, while still black, now totally enclosed around his feet. He wore an elbow-length sleeved black undershirt with nothing over it. The high collar was now gone. Like Naruto, he too wore mesh underarmor on his chest. His extended to his wrists. The forearms had a layer of bandages over them. He wore additional bandages around his neck, both thighs and both upper arms. All the bandages were covered in seals. But over all of that, Try wore a plain black cloak. It had sleeves just longer than his arms, as well as a high collar that reached the tip of his nose. Hiruzen was absolutely convinced that Try's hair color had changed. The black seemed darker, more like Itachi's jet black, and the red paradoxically seemed both brighter in tone but darker in color. Alright, you 3, we're done here today. As you already know, you start at the academy tomorrow. It will be a strange year for you because we've already taught you nearly everything they'd otherwise teach you, Tsunade spoke, the 3 boys nodding. And we're pretty sure it'll only be the 1 year if you display the ability we know you possess, Hiruzen added. Privately, he and Tsunade agreed that all 3 were already beyond the academy, but to become a genin you had to graduate from the academy. Okay, you 3, we're done for today, off home with you. You're expected at the academy entrance by 9 a.m., Shizen stated, dismissing the 3. Later that evening, Naruto was shoveling his food into his mouth, as he always did. Try could only shake his head. Naruto, why do you persist in eating as if someone's going to take your food from you? He asked his blonde brother. QSMMMundway, Naruto replied, his mouth still full, 1 or 2 grains of rice flying from his mouth across the table. Naruto, that's disgusting, swallow first, then speak, Try's blunt voice getting through as Naruto swallowed the entire onigiri he just stuffed in his mouth with one great gulp. Sorry Try, I forgot, said the blonde with one of those eyeless smiles that Kakashi was so known for. Kami forbid you actually remember for once, Try muttered under his breath as another onigiri vanished down Naruto's maw, quickly followed by a piece of prawn toast. Try just shuddered, looking anywhere but the blonde. His eyes fell on Minato, who was, in turn, watching Kushina feeding the latest addition to the family. A few months earlier Minusha had been born. And even at such an early age, they could tell that daughter would become the spitting image of her mother. The expected had also happened. Minusha's arrival had relegated Naruto and Try even further down their parents' list of priorities. Both he and Naruto were confident their parents no longer kept up to date on their training and that neither knew how strong they now were. Over the past year, Try had made many visits to his Tusan's office. He had borrowed or copied dozens of scrolls. He had even found a scroll on the Hiraishin, although he couldn't open it. The locking seal on the scroll was, for now, beyond him. Katon, Suiton, Futon Ninjutsu, Chakra Control, Fuinjutsu, Genjutsu. Try had systematically assimilated all the knowledge available to him. Not even Naruto knew of Try studying genjutsu. Despite Try's vast chakra reserves, he developed a great level of control over it. And it had allowed him to learn to use genjutsu. And if Naruto didn't know, then nobody knew. Although Try wondered whether Itachi suspected, since as Try improved in his secret skill it had become harder for the Uchiha to use genjutsu on him. He would likely keep his genjutsu a secret until he needed it. Surprise and deception suited him and his style of fighting. Over the past year he had refined his style. He wasn't very good at taijutsu. That was Naruto's field, so he focused elsewhere. Try focused instead on ninjutsu, shurikenjutsu, and pure speed. The speed was his counter to taijutsu. After all, how can someone punch you if they can't catch you? He and Madogai-sensei had spent hours improving his speed. Try wore weight seals permanently now. With them active he weighted double his actual weight. Only Gai-sensei had seen him move with the seals deactivated. He used shuriken and senbon to unsettle opponents, and ninjutsu to finish fights. His greatest asset though lay elsewhere. It was his ability to dictate any fight. His skills with misdirection and confusion meant he was always in control. Whether on the offensive or defensive, he was always dictating what happened next. This wasn't to say Try couldn't fight in close quarters, but when he did, he utilized his speed to the maximum. The damage dealt through the kinetic impact of his punches and kicks was provided through speed, not power. He now possessed a level 5 knowledge in Fuinjutsu, his photographic memory allowing him to the art of seals far faster than would otherwise be possible. Naruto happily chewed on another piece of prawn toast. Sparring always made him hungry, and his sensei had had him sparring with Try and Itachi all day, testing their overall skills. He could see Try looking at their Tusan. They both knew Try handled the loneliness better than he did. And the arrival of their new sister only made it worse. The seating plan at the dinner table said quite a lot about the family dynamic. And their guest tonight noticed it too. Hiruzen Sarutobi would dine with them on occasion. Naruto and Try both loved it when he did because it meant they had someone present who would actually regularly interact with them. Minato sat at the end of the table with Rezano to his right. On the other side of Rezano was Kushina, and in between the two of them was baby Minusha. Try and Naruto both sat to the left of Minato and rarely interacted with anybody else at the table other than each other. Just like his brother Naruto too had defined his fighting style, Naruto specialized in kenjutsu and taijutsu. He was a close combat fighter. He had his own complete taijutsu style combining the styles Gai, Hiruzen and Tsunade had taught him. The combination of the three left him with a hard-hitting, direct style of taijutsu, and the incorporation of his two tanto provided him range and fast killing power. His ninjutsu saw him use Suiton in an offensive capacity, and Doton in a defensive capacity. The Suiton jutsu provided him with range, adding another dimension to his fighting style. He too had begun learning Fuinjutsu. Although he was only at level 2 to Try's 5, it meant he also bore a number of various seals on him. Underneath the happy exterior he displayed when eating, Naruto was anxious. Tomorrow was the entrance speech. All the new students' parents would be there. Naruto knew Tusan would be there. After all, he was the one that gave the speech, but... Ka-chan, are you going to be at the entrance speech? Naruto asked, half knowing the answer already but a part of him holding out in hope. A futile hope he soon realized as Kushina gave him her answer. Sorry Naruto-chan, but I'm busy looking after Reza-chan and Minu-chan. Your Tusan will be there though. And without another word, she picked up the empty plates and simply walked into the kitchen. Naruto's face dropped. The emotional barriers he'd built over the years of emotional negligence were being pushed to the brink. Try, however, wasn't upset. He was livid. His face was the same neutral calm, but underneath he was seething. His Ka-chan's words had no apologetic tone to them, the utter disregarding of them both, the contempt she displayed. Try wasn't overly fussed about the academy overall, but he knew how much it meant to Naruto. The excitement had been building in his blonde sibling for weeks, and to watch it drain away in a second had him on the verge of seeing red. Try was having to concentrate hard. It was the only thing preventing him from venting killing intent, something he developed seemingly by accident throughout his training. He wouldn't be denied the satisfaction of letting his parents find out about their ignorance at a time that suited both him and Naruto. He knew it was petty, that it was vindictive. But he simply didn't care. Looking at Naruto again, Try could tell what was about to happen. Breathing deeply, he brought his anger under control. Tusan, may Naruto and I be excused, we'd like to go for a walk before bed. Minato only gave Try the briefest of glances before nodding. The Yondaime Hokage watched as Try practically led Naruto out of the dining room. Minato mussed over his son's actions but figured they were just nervous before he went to help Kushina wash up. Hiruzen just sat there. What he just watched deeply saddened him. Only he, along with Tsunade, Shizen, Itachi and somewhat bizarrely Shursui, knew that it happened. But to see it with his own eyes near broke Hiruzen's heart. He knew Minato and Kushina loved Naruto and Try, that had never been in doubt but to see the damage their actions or lack thereof caused. And Naruto and Try had asked him to keep quiet on the matter, restraining him on the matter. Training Ground 41. It had taken Try and Naruto nearly 15 minutes to reach Training Ground 41. This particular training area was very out of the way and saw little in the way of traffic. Try had known he had to get Naruto out of the house the moment he'd seen that look on his face. It wasn't a face he saw often, perhaps once every few months. But he knew that it meant Naruto was on the verge of tears. Try always took Naruto somewhere secluded, where they wouldn't be disturbed so Naruto could vent the bottled up and repressed emotions while Try would comfort him as best he could. And that's exactly what he was doing. A reassuring hand on Naruto's shoulder as the blonde quietly cried, the tears cascading down his face. There was nothing he could say that would help, he simply had to let it run its course. If Try hadn't been totally focusing on his brother, he would have likely noticed they weren't really alone that night. Sat on a tree branch some 30 feet away was another who needed to away from everyone. He wasn't lamenting the actions of another, he was instead lamenting the actions he himself had taken. In a moment of weakness, his envy had taken control of him. And his weakness had cost the life of a dear friend and rival. He was still coming to terms with his actions and what it had cost him, but there was more. He was also coming to terms with something his weakness had given him, something he didn't fully understand. A 4-pointed pinwheel on a background of red. Try, Naruto, and Itachi were stood in a line on one of the academy's training grounds. On a platform above was the Yondaime Hokage, decked out in his cloak and hat. He was about to give the speech he gave the new students every year. Looking down at the new batch amongst all the new students who weren't descended from a clan. There were the heirs to the Uchiha and Inuzuka clans. And while their clans' respective heirs weren't yet old enough, there was also a Yamanaka and an Akimichi. And for the first time since he and Kushina had attended the academy, both the Uzumaki and the Namikaze clans was also represented. Minato took a breath and began. New students, greetings and welcome to the Shinobi Academy of Konohagakure. Today you begin your first step on the way to becoming the next generation of guardians, defenders of your families, friends, your homes and your country. But what does it mean to be a Konoha shinobi? Its deepest meaning is one only you can answer in time, but its meaning is also one in which you all share regardless of birth or family name. You are all the embodiment of the will of fire. When you find yourself struggling, when you find the going tough, always remember the will of fire. For the will of fire is to remember that you don't fight for yourself. You fight for your family, your friends, your home and your country. It is in the defense of those and that which you care for most that you are strongest. So work hard, train long and learn what you are taught and you will earn your hitaites. And with that you will become true shinobi. The ending of Minato's speech was met with rapturous applause from the students and assembled parents. Minato scratched the back of his head and smiled sheepishly. He was a confident man, and yet he was still awkward when it came to crowds and speeches. With a brief wave, he was gone in a yellow flash. Naruto sighed while Try just rolled his eyes. Naruto felt a hand on his shoulder. Turning his head, he found it was Itachi's. The Uchiha gave his friend a small sympathetic smile. Try had detailed last night's events to him after spotting Naruto had lost most of the enthusiasm he'd had bubbling away over the previous weeks. Thank you, Itachi, I'm fine, Naruto said with another sigh. He had perked up a bit after he and Try were greeted by Tsunade, Hiruzen, Shizen and Guy who'd been back in the village a matter of hours. Their words of encouragement putting a smile back on Naruto's glum face. Try, Naruto, Itachi. Good luck. They heard Shizen shout from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Guy next to here was crying tears of happiness. Yes. Now you three can display the power of youth to your new classmates. The Taijutsu master shouted. While the man could be a bit much at times, the three considered him a good friend as well as a sensei. They each laughed at his emotional display. In front of all the new students were a small group of adults of various ages, all sporting the Konoha Hitaite. One stepped forward. Greetings students, my name is Sora Yui and I am the academy headmaster, and behind me are the teachers. If they call your name then you will be in their class, and they will be your sensei. Sora stepped to the side allowing the assembled sensei to begin calling out names. The students, for the most part, chatted among themselves as they waited for their names. The three friends said nothing as they looked around at all the new faces. Uzumaki Try, the call went out from a man in his early 30s. With a nod to his two friends, Try walked towards his new sensei. He nodded his head in greeting as he moved to stand behind him. The calling of Try's name had silenced many of the students and parents. Many turned to get a look at the mysterious adopted son of Minato and Kushina, not that they could discern much with most of him hidden behind his cloak. Try had only just joined the back of the line when his new sensei spoke again. Inuzuka Hana Try was soon joined by a young girl with long brown hair tied in a ponytail, a lock either side of her face. She had fong-shaped red markings on both cheeks and black eyes. Walking around her feet, however, were what marked her as an Inuzuka, 3 Niken puppies. The 3 young dogs sniffed at Tri's feet. They seemed friendly, so Tri squatted down. "Hello, you 3, he said calmly, slowly raising his hand, ready to back off if any of them growled at him. His pre-academy education had included learning about the various clans in Konoha, so he knew he had to be wary lest you end up with a bite. Hana herself was watching with interest. Her 3 companions were usually cautious around new sights and smells. She was ready to call them to heel should they growl, but they didn't. "I take it they aren't normally so nice?" Tri asked, having seen the slightly surprised look on the girl's face. No. They are normally shy or they growl. If you want to head to the classroom, your new classmates will join you when I've called them, room 2, floor 3. They both nodded and headed inside, the Niken following at Hana's feet. Naruto and Itachi watched Tri and Hana walk into the academy. Several more names were called out before everyone had their heads turned again. Uchiha Itachi, the Uchiha heir, and Naruto shared a look before Itachi shrugged his shoulders as he too walked inside, his sensei telling him the classroom he was heading to. Time went by as more and more names were read out. Eventually, Naruto was one of the final few yet to have their names called out. It had been over 10 minutes since Itachi's had been called. And now Naruto was getting nervous, but he wasn't sure why. Then it happened. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. The yard went quiet at the utterance of his name. He stepped towards the man who'd called his name. His new sensei gave him the room he needed to go to. The nerves were now in full effect, so nervous that he didn't even notice the man who'd called his name was the same man who'd previously called Tri and Itachi's names. With a final wave to the group of onlooking shinobi who'd spent the past 3 years training him, he headed through the main door into the academy. Heading up to the 3rd floor, he came out into a corridor. Looking at the numbers above the doors, he found the room he was looking for, room 2. Opening the door, he looked into the classroom to find a dozen or so students, 2 of whom were Itachi and Tri. Upon seeing his brother and best friend, he let out a sigh of relief. He stepped through the door, shutting it behind him. Looking around the room, against one wall was a blackboard with a desk in front of it. Opposite the desk was 2 columns of tiered desks, each containing 3 rows, those further back raised higher than the ones in front. There were 6 desks, and they were wide enough for 2 people, and it was at these desks he found the 2 familiar faces. Tri was sat at the 2nd desk up nearest the door, and sat next to him was the Inuzuka he'd seen earlier. Tri was still busy being introduced to her Niken, while Itachi was sat in the row behind Tri but on the other side of the room. Sat next to him was a lithe girl with large black eyes and long brown hair. Naruto could see the fan emblem on the back of her light purple outfit marking her as an Uchiha. There was only one seat left in the room, and that was at the desk directly behind Tri, so Naruto heading towards it. He got a smile from Itachi as he walked past him, and Tri gave him a thumbs up despite his full attention on the puppy playfully biting his other hand as he fussed the animal. Naruto sat down on the bench behind the desk. He extended his hand to the person he'd be sitting next to. "Hi, I'm Naruto," he said, introducing himself. "Marita Nakimichi," was the gruff reply as the larger boy shook his hand. They barely shook hands before the door opened again, and in walked the man who'd called their names outside. He put his books down on the desk before clapping his hands together. "Morning class, my name is Daikoku Funino, you call me Daikoku-sensei." "Understood," he said in a loud, slightly aggressive voice, startling some of them into sitting up straight. Daikoku was a large man with short brown hair and a goatee. His attire was near identical to Kakashi's. "Hi, sensei," they collectively replied. The large man smiled before speaking again, this time in a much softer, jovial voice. "Excellent, now why don't we start by introducing ourselves, since you'll all be getting to know each other anyway." There were 6 desks in front of him. He pointed at a girl sat at the bottom left desk. "You can start us off." The girl stood. "I'm Saki Yua," she said in a quiet voice. She had hair Naruto thought looked similar to Kurenai-san's in style, just with the addition of a top knot, and that her hair was green. She wore dark blue long-leg sandals reaching mid-thigh. In addition, she wore short blue pants with a black half-skirt around her right hip. On her torso she wore a black sleeveless top that cut off at the belly button. She had bandages around her stomach and her right hand. Her arms had red sleeves stretching from upper arm to her wrists. Finally, under the entire outfit, she wore mesh. Saki sat down and the girl next to her stood. "My name is Kazue Yuki." The girl was blue, very blue, her entire outfit, and her hair was the exact same shade of light blue. She wore her long blue hair in a prominent high ponytail with a second ponytail below it. She had a single bang stretching from the top of her forehead to just above her nose. Her arms and legs were practically covered in bandages, while she also wore mesh that covered her torso. She wore a one-shoulder vest over her upper body with a short diagonal skirt that reached her upper right thigh but extended to just above her left knee. Her heel sandals reached to below her knees. Moving on to the second desk was a boy with brown eyes and eyebrows that made him look permanently annoyed. He had long straight gray-black hair. He wore light gray sandals, full-length green pants and a long-sleeved black shirt that reached his upper thigh. Finally, he wore a plain red bracelet around each wrist. His name was Rokaru Kenta. Next to Rokaru was a girl named Meimo with light gray hair tied in two long braids reaching her tailbone. She had a ponytail-like bang either side of her face that reached down to her chest. She had light brown short open-heeled sandals with black three-quarter pants. Her black overshirt was very similar to the one worn by Anko Mitarashi, a kunoichi that unnerved Naruto greatly. However, Mei also wore a black high blouse in accompaniment that reached the bottom of where her would one day be leaving her stomach exposed. The blouse also completely covered her neck. The next desk was Hana, who stood, introduced herself as well as her Niken, the three Heimer brothers. Tri stood to introduce himself, removing his cloak in the process so everybody could actually get a look at him. Next was a girl with platinum hair tied in a simple ponytail, the giveaway sign of her entire clan. Keiko was her name, and she was a Yamanaka. She wore a sleeveless light blue chipao dress with thigh-length dark gray sandals. She wore mesh around both hands with bandages wrapped around her right arm. Next to her was Saisuke Mano, whose long, spiky light brown hair reminded Naruto far too much of Jiraiya. He wore a gray cloak over a black shirt with dark blue pants and blue sandals. Slung over his back a kama hold in bandages. Moving to the third row saw Itachi introduce himself along with his fellow clanswoman, Izumi Uchiha. The final desk saw Naruto introduce himself. Before last but not least Muritan did the same. The Akimichi wore a brown hat, an orange-white shirt with the kanji for food on the back, and plain black pants. He also had distinctive circular markings on his cheeks and chin. Excellent, now we shall begin our first lesson together. Daikoku clapped. An hour later. Their first lesson was well underway. Daikoku-sensei was covering chakra control and its importance. Thankfully, all 12 had awakened their chakra prior to their first day. It had been an hour and Hana's Niken had, for the most part, settled down. One was asleep across Hana's feet, the second was sat on its hind legs next to Hana, its Inuzuka master gently scratching the dog's head. The third was curled up in Tri's lap fast asleep. Hana was absolutely baffled by her Niken's actions. She'd never seen them take to someone so quickly. You find something more interesting, Miss Inuzuka? The words jerked her back to attention. Her Daikoku and the entire class were looking at her. And in no sensei, Hana managed to stutter, embarrassed at being caught out. Perhaps you'd like to tell the class what could hold your attention more than your lessons? Daikoku asked. Hana tried to find an answer, but before she could try spoke. Don't blame Hana-san sensei, it's technically my fault. The confused look on the Chunin's face giving him license to continue. It's her Niken sensei, she's still trying to figure out why they're so friendly towards me. I'm baffled by it too. Daikoku studied the young Uzumaki. If he's lying, then he's good at hiding it. Well, in that case then, Mr. Uzumaki, if you're accepting responsibility, then you can do the punishment of sorts. Stand in front of my desk facing the class if you please. Tri shortly nodded. He gently lifted the Niken out of his lap and handed it over to Hana, earning him an annoyed mumble from the animal following its unceremonious waking from its nap. Tri made his way to the front and stood next to his teacher. What do you require of me, sensei? In my hand I have a leaf. I would like you to demonstrate the leaf concentration exercise I have just described. Hi, sensei. Where would you like me to hold the leaf? He received his answer as Daikoku placed the leaf on his forehead. The leaf which should fall to the floor instead stuck to Tri's forehead as per the exercise. Very good. Now let's test your ability to split your concentration, Daikoku commended before placing another leaf, this time on Tri's cheek. Again the leaf stuck in place. The teacher kept adding more leaves and just like the first two they stuck fast. After a dozen Daikoku stopped. Fascinating, Tri-san, you display remarkable chakra control. Far beyond your years, I'd say. I'm intrigued as to how you've achieved this. Practice, sensei, lots of practice. I have abnormally large chakra reserves as is normal for Uzumakis. It meant my chakra control was bad, so for an hour a day for the past 3 years I've practiced it. Daikoku nodded as he listened to his student. Okay, Tri-san, pass those leaves amongst your classmates before you take your seat again, and well done. Thank you, sensei, Tri replied as he began handing out the leaves. Hana received her leaf last since Tri sat next to her. After he'd sat down he looked over at her and gave her a wink. Okay class, you've just seen a demonstration. I'd like you to practice this exercise until lunch. You can practice holding the leaf on your finger first if you wish, but the ultimate aim is to have it stick to your forehead. Daikoku finished with a clap as his new students set to work. The teachers at the academy were told to keep an early eye out for potential prodigies. And at the back of his mind, Daikoku wondered whether he had one in Uzumaki try. Surveying the rest of his class, he could see both Naruto and Itachi already had the leaves stuck to their foreheads. Itachi-san, how are you doing it exactly? Izumi next to him asked. He turned his head towards her. It's like a more advanced version of awakening your chakra. You need to pull on the chakra and draw it towards your forehead, Itachi explained before he could continue. However, Try spoke up. There's no tenketsu point in your forehead to send your chakra towards, which is why concentration is key. Next, Naruto added his own advice. You need to use the right amount of chakra too little and the leaf won't stick. Too much and you'll push the leaf away. The entire class had listened to the three of them explain the exercise, and the faces of many of them seemed to brighten as they understood. Over the next 10 to 15 minutes, several more of them managed to get the leaves to stick, even if only briefly. Try, for the most part, had been watching Hana attempt the exercise. His attention was drawn to the desk in front of him when he heard a thud. Looking down, the gray-haired girl Mei had her head on the desk. Mei jerked up straight as she felt someone sit down on her bench next to her. The red and black hair allowing her to identify Try, who leaned his head on his fist as he stared at her. What's up? Try asked her. Mei sighed. I don't know if I'm doing it right. How am I supposed to tell if I'm channeling my chakra correctly? Try calmly nodding as she explained her troubles. The Uzumaki heir tapped a finger on his lips, trying to think of a way he could show her. His eyes widened slightly as he thought of a way. Okay, I think I have a way I can show you. I'm not sure if it will work, but we can give it a try. Mei gave him a firm nod. Try held out his hand. Give me your hand, Mei-san. We'll form the monkey seal with them. The gray-haired girl suddenly felt nervous, a tinge of red on her cheeks. Most of the class was now looking at the two of them. Try gave her a small reassuring smile. Swallowing her nerves, she placed her hand on his right hand and her left together, forming the monkey hand seal. Now what I'm going to do is manipulate my chakra through your chakra network. This might feel weird, the boy said, closing his eyes. Okay, Mei had barely spoken before his eyes went wide. She could feel his chakra surge up her arm. It soon spread across her entire body. She could feel the heat. It made her feel like she was in a sauna. All of the foreign chakra in her body quickly made its way to her chakra coils. So much, she thought as it surged through her. Okay, I think I've learned your chakra network. Now I'm going to draw my chakra from your coils to your forehead. I want you to remember how it feels. With that, Try worked chakra from her coils towards her forehead. Daikoku, who had until now been watching with great interest, stepped forward and held the leaf against Mei's forehead. And there the leaf stayed, putting a big smile on her face. Try ceased, and the leaf glided down onto the desk. Okay, now I want you to try. Don't worry about how long the leaf sticks for. Just focus on recreating that feeling. Mei took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and concentrated. Some of Try's own chakra was still laced in with Mei's. With it, he could feel how it moved around the girl's network. That's it, use a little more chakra to make the connection stronger. Again, their sensei placed the leaf on her forehead, and it stuck there for a few seconds before Mei lost her concentration. That's it, Mei, see you can do it, Daikoku encouraged his student. Thank you, sensei, Mei chirped. And thank you, Try-san? Her sensei just nodded while Try replied, You're welcome, Mei-san. But I was wondering. Mei gave him a confused but intrigued look. Could I have my hand back, Mei-san? He asked, another slight smile on his face. Mei quickly looked down, and sure enough, their hands were still together in the monkey seal. She pulled her hand back as she received a static shock, her face going bright red. A few chuckled at her expense, but Try only smiled sympathetically. He channeled chakra into one of the storage seals on his arm, and a scroll popped into his hand. He offered the scroll to Mei. Here, this scroll has a few chakra control exercises you can practice with. Some are easy, others not so much. Mei took the scroll. Thank you, her voice barely a squeak. Daikoku was now deeply impressed. For a child to possess control great enough to manipulate his own chakra through another person. He could only shake his head as Try retook his own seat. A little while later. Okay, class, that'll be all for now. After lunch, meet me outside on the shuriken training ground, Daikoku said to his students as they began filtering their way out. Try-san, could I see you for a moment? The Uzumaki just stood by his sensei's desk and waited until everyone else had left. Don't worry, you're not in trouble. I'm interested as to just how you've obtained such chakra control. You've been here a matter of hours and you have already displayed better control over your chakra than any student I've ever taught. Now, you mentioned you practice your control daily, but it's not enough to explain what I've seen today. A wide smile on his face as his sensei's complimentary words rang in his ears. You're right, sensei. While I technically do only spend an hour a day working on my chakra control, I am kind of cheating on the time issue. Cheating how? Daikoku asked. Try formed the clone hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique. A poof of smoke later, and there were two tries stood next to one another. It quickly made sense to Daikoku. I see, you're using the memory retention of shadow clones to augment training. How many are you using? 24 for an hour a day. Daikoku was stunned into silence. Kage Bunshin required a great deal of chakra to create. And to create 24 just to train one specific aspect was astounding. Will that be all, sensei? Try inquired, dispelling his shadow clone. He only received a nod as his Daikoku sat on the edge of his desk. The Chunin managed to regain his voice before Try had left the room. Are Naruto and Itachi able to create shadow clones? Try stopped in the doorway, not as many. But yes, and with that, he slid the door closed. The afternoon lesson? Alright class, Daikoku said, welcoming them back. He held 3 shuriken between the fingers of his right hand. I expect you've been introduced to wooden shuriken and kunai, but here you'll be using the genuine metal ones. Your task is simple enough. Throw the shuriken and hit your mark, he added, pointing at the wooden targets downrange. As an example, Daikoku threw his 3 shuriken and struck a target with limited spread. With his introduction complete, his new class got to it, hundreds of shuriken flying downrange. As Daikoku expected, Itachi and Izumi set themselves apart at throwing shuriken. The Uchiha teachings with shuriken bear fruit once again, he thought as he watched the two strike the bull's eye over and over again. The two seemed to have made it into a game, each trying to best the other. Despite their little competition, Itachi still found time to give Saki and Kazue some tips. The arm provides the power, the flick of the wrist provides direction. Work on accuracy first, power comes later. Daikoku nodded at the sound advice one of his Uchiha students provided. Looking around, he found Naruto doing the same for Rokaru and Saisu. Sensei, is it just me or is there another target behind the tree on the right? Naruto shouted. Daikoku smiled. He had put the target there, intrigued to see if anyone would notice it and furthermore if any of them could hit it. Yes, Naruto-san, there is a 13th target behind the tree. Anyone who can hit it from where you're standing gets a commendation. But sensei, it's hidden behind a tree? Saki asked. Precisely, Saki-san. Advanced shuriken jutsu allows for ways to get shuriken around corners. Same for kunai. How high off the ground is the target, sensei? Itachi asked, making Daikoku smile. He really wanted to see if anybody could hit the mark. It's 8 feet off the ground at a 16 degrees vertical angle, his sensei replied. Itachi nodded, with a single shuriken in each hand. He threw the first from his left hand. The way he threw it meant it was traveling slightly to the left away from the tree. Most of the students looked confused. Then Itachi threw the second from his right hand. It traveled much faster than the first, quickly catching up and smashing off the first. The collision redirected the second shuriken massively to the right, around the tree where they heard a dull thud. Daikoku shined forward to check and sure enough, Itachi had hit the mark. Shining back, Daikoku patted Itachi's shoulder. Well done, Itachi-san. He turned to face the rest of the group. As Itachi has just demonstrated, you can redirect shuriken around trees and other potential obstacles. To do this, you need to be able to mentally solve collision equations and impact vectors. Of course, should you carry a futon element affinity, you could simply throw the shuriken through the tree. Daikoku finished. Naruto shared a look and a slight grin with Try. The blonde raised an eyebrow, silently inviting him to do just that. Try gave the slightest shake of the head. The three had previously agreed not to display their abilities with elemental chakra. In the end, several more of them tried to hit the hidden target. Izumi hit her mark, Naruto barely hit it while Try missed by 2 millimeters, much to Naruto's mirth. And at the end of the day, as their lesson drew to a close, as promised, Daikoku gave an official commendation to Itachi, Izumi, and Naruto. He also awarded one to Try for his helping Mei in the morning, after which he dismissed them until tomorrow. The 12 of them broke into smaller groups, having conversations amongst themselves. Hana, Mei, Keiko, Saisu, and Izumi all decided to go get some food before heading home. Hana turned around, intending to invite Try, Naruto, and Itachi, only to find that the three were already jumping across the rooftops towards the training grounds. Where do you suppose they're off to? Hana heard Izumi say over her shoulder. The Inuzuka grinned at the Uchiha. Why don't we go find out? The rest of the little group soon agreed to tail their mysterious classmates. Okay boys, find Try, Hana instructed the Heimer brothers. The young Niken shot off in pursuit. While they chased off after them, Daikoku was walking into the office of the academy headmaster. Daikoku-san, what can I do for you? The teacher bowed slightly. Sora-sama, you instructed us to inform you if we found any exceptional students. Sora seemed surprised. It's only been a day, are you saying you've found one already? Not quite, Sora-sama, I think I've found 3. Konoha Training Fields. The new students had managed to track the trio of Tri, Itachi, and Naruto to the training fields furthest from the village. They could hear a commotion up ahead, it almost sounded like a battle. They walked out into a clearing before hearing a voice. Suetun, Tepidama, water release, gunshot. There was no time for them to react, the ball of water was heading straight for them. Then a figure appeared in front of them. Who they were they couldn't tell, they flashed through hand seals. Futon, Risenpu, wind release, violent whirlwind. The ball of water was struck by a powerful gust of wind, pushing it away from the new arrivals. Damn it, Naruto, you need to pay attention. Itachi near shouted, the irritation evident in his voice as he appeared next to the group. Naruto soon appeared next to Itachi, scratching the back of his head with a sheepish grin on his face. Yeah, sorry about that, he apologized to no one in particular. The group had now, through the power of deduction, gathered that it was Tri who'd stopped them getting wet. Please don't tell me you didn't know they were there, Tri asked in an accusing tone. Naruto tried to look at least slightly guilty, he failed miserably. Shaking his head in disgust, Itachi turned to the group. Our apologies, Izumi, Hana, Saisu, Keiko, Mei. The group struggled to register his apology. They were still caught up in the display of elemental ninjutsu. Keiko snapped out of it first, why her hands on her hips, so, any reason we walk into a clearing only to find a water bullet shot at us? It's because my baka brother can't aim his jutsu, Keiko-san, Tri bluntly replied. An evil-looking grin spread across Itachi's face. We were sparing Keiko-san. All of you, please feel free to join us. Hana caught on to his meaning first. Niken, get him, she ordered, pointing at the blonde, the three Heimer brothers shooting towards a wide-eyed Naruto, Keiko and Saisu quickly joining them, much to Tri and Itachi's delight, both laughing as Naruto was chased around the clearing. And they continued chasing him for nearly at full speed for nearly 15 minutes. The chased and the chassis all collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. Tri formed half of the dog hand seal before pouring a bottle of water on his left hand. The water formed a ball around it, one, which he held out for the Niken, the three practically jumping into it to quench their thirst. Thank you, Tri-san, Hana said, getting a thumbs up with his spare hand in return. With the dogs watered, Tri began pulling more bottles of water from one of his storage seals and passed them around, apart from Naruto's, who instead had the bottle bounce off his head. Ow, what did you do that for? The blonde complained. To show you that you still need to work on your positional awareness. Baka! Tri shot back. Oh, come on, are you still complaining about that? Yes, Kami forbid if you had used the Katon ninjutsu, Itachi replied. So, shall we leave you three to continue arguing, or are we going to confront the elephant in the room, that is, you using elemental ninjutsu? Keiko asked the three of them. The three looked at each other, Tri nodded, Naruto shrugged his shoulders, leaving the talking to the Uchiha. Yes, the three of us can manipulate our chakra elements. I trust we can rely on your discretion on the matter? 3 months later. It was the end of another day at the academy, and the 12 students of Daikoku had all become good friends. But in particular, the 8 of Tri, Naruto, Itachi, Izumi, Hana, Keiko, Mei and Saisu had become near inseparable. Together at the academy, outside they trained and hanged out together. It had only taken the first week for Tri, Itachi and Naruto to be given the Prodigy titles. The bestowing of said title made for a proud Fugaku and Mikoto, whereas Minato and Kushina seemed totally unaware, and if they did know, they were ignoring it. The progress of the other 5 had increased as a result of training alongside the prodigal 3. Hana was beginning to display an affinity for taijutsu alongside her Niken and chakra control. Keiko had her clan jutsu and genjutsu. Izumi for genjutsu and shuriken jutsu. Mei, whose progress in chakra control had just kept accelerating with Tri's help. Finally Saisu for kenjutsu and taijutsu. All had progressed enough that the prodigal 3 introduced them to their chakra nature affinities and had begun showing them how to mold it. Although progress on that front was very slow. When the prodigal 3 had first joined the academy, they had expected to just go through the motions, graduate and be done with it. But what they had found was not but a pleasant surprise. Meeting new people, making new friends and learning from them. All 3 were loving life in the academy. Minato had a problem. He had 3 students about to graduate. Keeping them in the academy any longer would be a waste of their potential if the reports were to be believed. They were ready to be bestowed with the rank of genin. The problem lay in that he couldn't find a jonin to become their sensei. Kakashi had been his first choice, but for some reason he wasn't interested, something which surprised Minato given the interest he had shown in training Rezano. His next choice had been Madogai, since the 4 seemed to know each other, but he also ruled himself out. The taijutsu master felt he was not yet ready for a genin team. He personally asked several others, but they too had politely turned it down. The solution to finding a jonin instructor continued to elude him as he heard a knock at the door. Enter, he said, not looking up from the sheets of paper laid out on his desk. Hokage-sama, a female voice spoke. Looking up, he found Mikoto Uchiha, wife of the Uchiha clan leader Fugaku, standing in front of him. Mikoto-san, what can I do for you? Minato said, leaning back in his chair, stretching his arms. She lifted the stack of papers in her hands. These are for you to review, Hokage-sama. Minato's face fell when he realized it was more paperwork. Thank you, Mikoto-san, you can just put them on top of the pile, he replied, pointing to the edge of his desk. Looking to her left, her eyes fell on multiple stacks of papers. Any pile in particular? A hint of sympathy in her voice. Take your pick, he sighed as he looked back down at the papers on his desk, adding another one to the stack to his left. Something eating at you, Minato? I'm trying to find someone to be the Jonin sensei for our sons. Their graduation is around the corner, and I still can't find one. The frustration evident in his voice. Mikoto stepped around the desk to get a view of the papers strewn everywhere. The ones in the pile are those I've disregarded or have already turned it down. Everything else is who's left, Minato explained. Mikoto spent several minutes looking through all those already in the pile, and then at those on the desk. Then a name jumped out at her. It wasn't in the pile or on the desk. Minato, have you considered Shiranui-san? That got his attention, Genma? Again Minato leant back in his chair, pondering the possibility before shaking his head. No, he's not of the required rank. Oh come now, Minato, he's a Jonin in all but name. If it truly represents a problem, then just promote him. Mentally Minato knew she was right. That the council hadn't seen fit to promote him already was laughable. The more thought Minato gave it, the more it made sense. He was of the right age, mid to late 20s. He possessed the necessary experience. He'd fought in the previous World War alongside him. He had the temperament needed, it all fit. He made his decision. Inbyu, at his call, a masked figure appeared in front of him on one knee. Hi, Hokage-sama? Find Shiranui Genma and bring him to me. With only a nod, the Inbyu vanished in a veil of leaves. It was barely 20 minutes before a knock on the door signaled his arrival. You called, Hokage-sama? He asked, having let himself in. Yes, Genma. I'll jump straight to it. How'd you like to become a full Jonin? The bandana-clad man raised an eyebrow. Sure. What's the catch? Genma-san, what are you doing for the next year or two? Mikoto asked him. The Tokubetsu Jonin was only getting more confused. I'm a bodyguard to one of the strongest shinobi of our time. So not a great deal, Genma deadpanned. Mikoto chuckled while Minato looked slightly embarrassed. Genma-san, have you ever given any thought to being a Jonin sensei? The look he gave her made her wonder if she'd grown another head. You're kidding? Right. The looks they both gave him told him they weren't. I can't say I've given it any thought, he admitted. Mikoto stepped forward and handed him a folder. Seeing the confused look he gave her, she explained. It's the files for the 3 genin we think you do well with. Genma opened the folder. He fully expected to find 3 cobbled-together rookie genin. He didn't expect the 3 pictures that greeted him. Looking up at Minato, you'd entrust these 3 to me? Both nodded in reply. Genma was conflicted. He wanted the promotion to full Jonin. He'd seen his former genin teammate Guy made Jonin in recent years. And yet, despite the efforts of Minato and others to get him his promotion, it still hadn't been given. Plus, he wasn't been offered just any genin. He was being offered the Prodigal 3, as they'd been dubbed. Each was an heir to a Konoha clan. Can I think on this? He asked. Again Minato nodded. Genma was sat on a park bench just staring into the distance, his mind going over the pros and cons of what he was being offered. He had been there for 15 to 20 minutes as someone sat down next to him. He looked up to find one of his former genin teammates grinning at him. Genma-kun, why the long face? Guy asked in the loud, boisterous voice only he possessed. He only moved the folder in his hand, drawing Guy's attention to it. I see, you've been offered the chance to train the youthful fires of Konoha's next generation. Yep, but you don't know if you've got what it takes to be a Jonin sensei? Guy guessed, another nod from Genma telling him he was correct. I know you and Ebisu were always interested in having genin teams, but I never considered myself teacher material, Genma said, the thoughts in his head running out of his mouth. How many of us truly consider ourselves ready to become sensei? But ready or otherwise, we need to ensure the flames of youth burn strong in those who follow us, Guy proclaimed with determination in his eyes. Suddenly Guy snatched the folder Genma held weakly in his hand. Opening it to see who he'd been offered, Guy just burst out laughing. Genma just stared at him as kept laughing. Guy, finally pulling himself together, oh, Genma-kun. You won't have to do much hand-holding with these 3, Guy explained, wiping away a tear. Genma gave him a look that screamed explain. You won't have to do much in the way of training them, they have their own extensive training regime. I should know, I help train them. You just need to guide them through the beginning of their shinobi careers. If you were still their sensei 2 years from now, I'd be surprised. These 3 aren't ordinary genin. And if you don't believe me, then test them. Guy's words struck a chord with Genma. He had, of course, along with many others, heard of the potential the 3 possessed. Guy, do you think I can do this? Guy's reply was a toothy grin and a big thumbs up. Genma stood and patted his friend on the shoulder as he began to walk away. Thanks, Guy. Come in, Minato said. He was looking out the window, his mind on Genma and his decision. It had been about an hour since he'd left. Spinning around in his chair to see who'd stopped by, he found Genma stood in front of his desk. I do this, I make Jonin? Minato nodded. You need to be a Jonin to take a genin team. So they can't refuse your promotion this time. Okay, then I accept. With that, Genma bowed and vanished in a swirl of leaves. A week later. Daikoku was beside himself with joy. 3 of the finest students he'd ever had were graduating. The prodigal 3, as they'd been dubbed, were to become genin, and as their academy sensei, it was his final duty to present them the mark of a full shinobi. They were all present at that year's graduation ceremony. Itachi and Naruto were the only ones in their class to graduate. They were the only first years to graduate. The written test had been a breeze and the practical exam was too easy for the 3 of them. The graduation test had several new records thanks to the 3 of them. The graduates of Class 14, Sora, the academy headmaster, shouted to the crowd. Step forward, Uzumaki Uchiha Itachi and Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. The 3 boys stepped forward. Naruto surveyed the crowd. Tsunade was there, Hiruzen was there, Guy was there with tears of joy streaming down his face, their fellow classmates were all there, Itachi's parents were both there. But the distinctive blonde and red hair of his parents was decidedly absent. The sadness came bubbling back up to the surface as his face fell. Kao-chan said she'd be here. Her assurance to them both the night before ran through his mind over and over. And Trai noticed, Itachi noticed, Mikoto noticed, those who'd actually come to see the 2 brothers graduate noticed. Naruto quickly swallowed his emotions as Daikoku stepped forward. It has been an utter pleasure to have you 3 in my class. You've shown an ability far beyond your years. In a way, you helped teach your own classmates, and you've even taught me a thing or two. I consider it an honor to have been your sensei. Daikoku said to his 3 students, all 3 bowing to their sensei. Uzumaki step forward, Sora again shouted. In Daikoku's hand was the mark of a full shinobi, a Hittite. Uzumaki as your academy sensei, I hereby proclaim you ready to receive your Hittite and bestow upon you the rank of genin. The 2 shook hands as Trai received his Hittite. Uchiha Itachi stepped forward. Uchiha Itachi, as your academy sensei, I hereby proclaim you ready to receive your Hittite and bestow upon you the rank of genin. Again the 2 shook hands as Itachi was handed his forehead protector. Naruto was still scanning the crowd, desperately searching for red. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto stepped forward. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, as your academy sensei, I hereby proclaim you ready to receive your Hittite and bestow upon you the rank of genin. Naruto was just able to say, thank you, sensei, putting on a brave face. Naruto rejoined the line of new genin as Sora stood in front of them all. You are now full members of the shinobi forces of Konohagakure. You may put on your Hittites, wear them with pride. The headmaster waited for the genin to place them where they wished before continuing. All of you are to return here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. where you'll be told your teams and your Jonin sensei. 1. And with that, the ceremony was over. Naruto was distraught and Trai was fuming. Itachi, can you cover for us? Trai slowly asked, bringing his anger under control. The young Uchiha somberly replied, okay, but you know that they've all noticed, yes? I do, was his quick reply as once again led Naruto away. Trai and Naruto had never needed to explain it to those who'd taught them these past years. Down the years they'd all seen the crestfallen look in Naruto's eyes, the bright shine his eyes had when he was younger had long since been dulled. And they all now knew of its origins. Itachi made his way over to those who'd come to see him, and the 2 sons of the Hokage. Tsunade gave him a questioning look to which he gave a sad nod in reply. The blonde Sannin sighing as Sasuke launched himself into his older brother's arms with a shout, Oni-chan. Can I see your headband? Itachi knelt down to let his brother touch the metal plate that formed the centerpiece of the Hittite he'd wrapped around his forehead. After he'd stood again, he was engulfed in a hug. Congratulations, Itachi-chan, his mother proudly said. Thank you, Ka-chan. While he received a warm smile from his father which he gladly returned. The sound of a baby's laughter grabbed his attention. Turning his head, he saw a woman with long red hair with a pushchair in front of her. The pushchair had a young girl, perhaps 2 years old, again with red hair. Holding onto the pushchair was a young boy, perhaps 4 or 5 years old with bright yellow hair and whisker-like marks across his cheeks. Itachi recognized all three, he'd met them before. Ka-chan? The blonde child asked. Where are Naruto and Ai-chan and Tri and Ai-chan? Kushina was looked around the crowd, searching for the distinctive bright yellow and black/red hair of her two eldest. I don't know, Reza-chan, she answered glumly. I guess we'll see them at home. We need to continue your training anyway, she added before leaving, her youngest son in tow. But Ka-chan, I wanted to see their headbands, Rezano whined. Itachi just watched, a sense of disbelief falling over him. He knew that Kushina knew him personally, they'd met numerous times and he was standing not 15 feet in front of her. Yet she didn't even notice him. If she had, she could simply have asked him where her sons had disappeared to. And after what he just witnessed, he understood just a little of what it must be like for his best friends on a daily basis. A part of Itachi was sort of glad Kushina didn't notice him. What would he actually say? Sorry, Kushina-san, they were really upset because you weren't here, so they left? It made Itachi feel slightly guilty. Furthermore, Itachi couldn't decide what was worse: being late and missing the entire ceremony, or not turning up at all. Regardless, he didn't have the heart to tell them that their Ka-chan only turned up after they'd left. It had been several hours since the graduation ceremony, and the sun was beginning to set. Tri and Naruto were stood outside their front door. Naruto's knuckles were white as he gripped the door handle with a deep sense of trepidation over what might happen when he opened it. Just go upstairs, Naruto, I'll deal with any talking. The blonde nodded despondently before pushing the handle down and opening the door. The hall was dark and quiet, a line of light illuminating from the bottom of the door that leads to the front room/dining room. Naruto quickly shed his sandals and as quietly as possible rushed up the stairs. It wasn't quite quiet enough, however, as the door opened and Kushina stuck her head into the hallway. Tri had just stepped onto the first stair, hand on the banister. Tri-chan, dinner's ready for you both when you want it, she said quietly. We've already eaten, Ka-san, Tri replied coldly. Kushina visibly winced at his tone and dropping of the chan suffix as he walked up the stairs without another word. Kushina just stood there in the doorway. She had intended to apologize as they ate. I'd better go up and apologize to Th. Ka-chan, she heard Rezano exclaim in pain, ducking back into the dining room and rushing to his side. I cut myself, Ka-chan, he whimpered, the offending knife with a little blood lying on the table. Kushina took his hand in hers. Opening his palm, she found naught but a red line. The Kyuubi's chakra already heals him. I'll need to tell Minato and Jiraiya of this. In the commotion, her intention of apologizing to her two eldest was utterly forgotten. The next day. The time for ceaseless training was over, sort of. The training would continue, but their childhood was for all intents and purposes over. The promotion to Genin saw you classified as an adult. Age was irrelevant. They were 9 years old, and yet were adults. The past year had seen even greater levels of improvement for the prodigal three. Itachi's 3 Tomo eyes were something to behold. Naruto's combination of taijutsu and kenjutsu was devastating, while Tri's chakra control and Fuinjutsu defied belief. They were waiting in one of the larger classrooms at the academy. They were awaiting the announcement of their new sensei. The headmaster Sora was in the midst of announcing the new teams. Most of the new genin had been called and had already departed. Next team consists of Uzumaki Tri, Uchiha Itachi and Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. Naruto fist pumped at the three of them being teamed together. You are now Team 12, your Jonin sensei is Shirane Ginma. Ginma-san? Both Tri and Naruto said. You know him, Tri Naruto? Itachi asked. Tri nodded. Yeah, he's one of Two-san's guard platoon. The three were still musing amongst themselves when they heard a voice. So, do you want to continue talking among yourselves, or do you want to get started? In front of them was a man in his mid-20s with shoulder-length brown hair. His hitate was wrapped around his head in a bandana. His outfit was the standard Konoha uniform complete with flak jacket, and in his mouth was his trademark saban. Tri grinned. He'd met Ginma on a few previous occasions and he'd decided he liked the man. He'd found him to be a calm and collected individual, and his presence on the Hokage guard platoon was a testament to his ability. We're ready, Ginma-sensei, Naruto proudly proclaimed. I'll be the judge of that, the newly promoted Jonin rebutted. Training ground 3, 20 minutes. With that, Ginma vanished in a swirl of leaves. As a result, he missed his 3 new students Shunshin out of the room. Training ground 3 was one the 3 knew the location of but had never used it. It took Ginma about 10 minutes to arrive. Leaning against one of 3 wooden posts positioned in the center of a glade that dominated the training ground. That should take them about another 10 minutes. His train of thought was derailed and he had to clamp his teeth together to stop his saban from falling out as 3 figures appeared in front of him. Okay, I'll admit, that's impressive, he thought. Not bad at all. Maybe you aren't all hype after all. He commended them as he pulled a pair of bells out of his pouch. Minato had instructed him on the ins and outs of the bell test. The looks on the faces of his genins suggested they did too. "Are you familiar with these bells and their purpose?" he asked. Naruto nodded. "Yeah, Horizonjiji explained it to us ages ago." Genma noticed the brief flickers of irritation on Try and Itachi's faces. Again he was impressed. Interesting, both seemed to understand the importance of information. "Good, then I shan't have to explain what your task for today is," he said, tying the bells to the pouch to the left of his tailbone. "Stipulations, Genma-sensei?" Try asked. "None," was the reply. "In that case then, Genma-sensei, we ask that you not reveal what you learn of our abilities to Toussaint," Try asked. Genma furrowed his eyebrows at the strange request. What could they know that they don't want Hokage-sama to know? Letting his curiosity get the better of him, Genma slowly inclined his head, deciding to see where it led. Genma assumed a taijutsu stance as the Prodigal Three assumed a formation. Naruto stood front and center, Try was a few feet behind and slightly to his sibling's left, while Itachi stood further back slightly to Naruto's right. Perspective Team 12, your genin exam begins now. As Genma expected, Naruto shot forward straight towards him, the two tanto remaining in their sheaths. Try had also begun moving, except he'd taken a curved trajectory that would eventually bring him to Genma's side while Itachi was stood perfectly still. Deciding to focus on the two coming towards him, he shot towards Try. If Naruto was coming towards him head-on, it meant he was the dominant taijutsu user amongst them. Genma pulled a kunai from his pouch. Try did the same, but his seemed to simply appear in his hand. The two kunai clashed in a flicker of sparks and the grinding of metal. Genma kicked out at Try's ribs with a leg, forcing him back. The Jonin jumped to his right as Naruto arrived with a kick of his own aimed at the back of his knees. Seeing an opportunity to strike, Genma threw his kunai at Naruto only for it to be knocked off course after Try threw his. The Uzumaki forced Genma to draw another kunai to block the half-dozen shuriken cast towards him. Naruto followed the shuriken in, this time a tanto drawn. Genma threw a pair of shuriken of his own, stopping two of Naruto's while he blocked the remaining four, giving him the time to block Naruto's thrust with his tanto. Deflecting the blade to the left, he drove his right fist into Naruto's face, knocking him to the ground. Another flurry of shuriken from Try prevented him from continuing his attack. He used to lull to check his surroundings. That's when he noticed Itachi was gone. It was then that his senses screamed danger. He ducked just in time as foot whistled past where his head had just been. Lesson 1. Don't take your eyes off the Uchiha, Genma thought as he was forced to block a follow-up kick from Itachi, his momentum spinning him round, allowing him to use his other leg. It was barely 60 seconds in and Genma was forced to use the Senban in his mouth, shouting it at an oncoming Naruto. Try, however, was approaching from his blind side. He was forced to kawarimi lest Try reach the bells. Genma ended up in the tree line, hidden by some bushes about 30 feet away. "Now, how will you find me?" he wondered as his genin stood where they were. "You have him, Itachi?" Naruto whispered. "Yes, 33 feet to Try's 4 o'clock, Itachi whispered back, his Sharingan able to distinguish Genma's chakra amongst the greenery. "Naruto, Itachi, we can't rush him, he has the advantage. Naruto, you swing right, Itachi you swing left, force him out of the trees towards me." Both nodded as they shunned shining away. Genma figured they'd both gone looking for him, and he was preparing to strike out at an alone Try. Two voices put paid to that. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Fire release, great fireball technique. Suetun, Teppadama. Water release, gunshot. From his left came a large fireball and his right a smaller ball of water. Genma had a problem. For obvious reasons he couldn't go left or right. If he moved back further into the trees, then Naruto and Itachi would be on him immediately. He couldn't kawarimi. Try was stood next to his log and he'd only prepared the one. He didn't think he'd need more than that. The only option left was to push forward out into the open. With that, Genma rushed forward from his hiding place. The balls of fire and water clashing, a great cloud of steam chasing the newly promoted Jonin out of the tree line. And it's there that he ran into his next surprise. Futon, Resenpu. Wind release, violent whirlwind. The sudden gust of wind forced Genma to channel chakra to his feet to keep him still. Ga. His Futon Jutsu is holding me stationary. How can all three of them already possess nature ninjutsu? And looking over his shoulders, sure enough, Naruto and Itachi were taking positions either side of him. The three were surrounding him in a triangle. Try's wind not letting up, Naruto redrew a tanto while a flicker of movement brought his attention to the hand signs Itachi was weaving. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. A stream of 6 fireballs formed an arc between Itachi and Try as they sped towards Genma. Naruto was still stationary, and that provided him with a window to escape the imminent danger. He let the fireballs get closer before he released the chakra holding him stationary. He allowed the gust of wind to carry him away from Itachi's jutsu. And not a moment too soon, because the moment the small fireballs entered the wind stream they flared in size and lost their shape, turning instead into a stream of flames. Now that he was far enough away, he noticed that Tri's vision of him was obscured by the flames. So he kawaramied right in front of the Uzumaki, catching him completely off guard long enough to slam a fist into his stomach. Tri doubled over as what air left in him rushed out. Genma kicked him away before turning his attention to the other two. Wanting to deal with Itachi first, Genma pulled 6 Saban from his pouch and threw them at Naruto in an uneven pattern. Even as he rushed towards Itachi, he kept throwing more Saban towards the blonde. Naruto was forced to dodge left and right, massively slowing him down as Genma reached Itachi. After reading their files, he knew the Uchiha was better at taijutsu than Tri, but wasn't the same standard as Naruto. It meant Genma began to push him back as Itachi sacrificed ground to maintain form. Genma was forced off the offensive with a roll to his left as Naruto finally arrived with a wide horizontal swing with the tanto. He lashed out with a quick kick to the side of Naruto's standing knee, leaving him in a heap on the ground. A few more Saban aimed at Itachi meant he couldn't go on the offensive either. Genma jumped away. It was about time he moved beyond taijutsu. Weaving hand seals before pulling out kunai with fine metal wire tied to them. With several in one hand, he threw them, Katan, Ryuka no Jutsu, fire release, dragon fire technique. Out of his mouth, he spewed fire that raced along the wires. Itachi was able to deflect 2 of the kunai away with shuriken, but he and Naruto were forced to dodge those that remained. A few licks of flame caught one of Naruto's ankles. Naruto's nose scrunched up as the smell of singed clothing hit him. Wanting to keep his genin moving, Genma made more hand seals, Katan, Enden, fire release, flame bullet, firing fist-sized fireballs one after the other at the both of them. Ensuring that neither Itachi or Naruto would be able to engage him, he spared a glance in Tri's direction. And like Itachi earlier, Genma found his genin had again vanished. The briefest of flickers on the edge of his vision was the only warning he got as a knee slammed into his side. The speed! I didn't feel him coming at all. Before he could move away, Genma felt a piece of paper pressed into the back of his neck. Fuin, was all he heard before Tri backed off of his own accord, his left hand forming the seal of confrontation. 2. Naruto and Itachi were now speeding towards him. He needed to get some distance between himself and the 3 of them. His Kawarimi log was now unattended, so he channeled chakra in preparation, but he couldn't. He simply couldn't focus his chakra. He couldn't draw on it, much less mold it. He was quickly surrounded on all sides. The fight was over. All his genin needed to do was reach out and take the bells. Sure, he could call on his taijutsu, but they'd soon overwhelm him. Genma grinned as he went into his pouch for another Saban, but as his hand felt around for one, he couldn't hear the bells. Confused, he looked down at the pouch to find the bells gone. He looked around at each of his genin. He found both bells and held in Tri's hand. When do you get them from me? When I need you, sensei, Tri calmly replied. Genma's grin only widened. Internally, he was a little embarrassed. It had taken them less than 5 minutes for them to retrieve them. The seal? It's a chakra suppression seal. You'll have noticed you couldn't manipulate chakra, Tri explained. Alright. Congratulations, Team 12, you passed the genin test, Genma congratulated them. Tri, could you remove the seal please? Hi, sensei, Tri said as Genma knelt down and held his hair out of the way. With a few flicks with the brush, the seal dissolved from his neck. So you know Fuin Jutsu, Genma stated rhetorically. Tri nodded. Okay, you can elaborate later. Now go retrieve the equipment you've used. While they retrieved the kunai they'd used, it gave Genma a moment to think. Guy wasn't kidding, these 3 are not normal genin. They displayed ability I'd expect from a low to middling chunin. It only took them a few seconds to retrieve all their equipment back. Naruto had even gathered his Senban. Taking back his Senban, thank you Naruto, the blonde nodded and smiled. Now, all of you take a seat, he invited, waving a hand at the grass-covered ground. Okay, now that we definitely know that I'll be your sensei, then let's do the introductions. My name is Shirani Genma. I'm a member of the Hokage Guard platoon. I don't like many things, and instead of hating, I'm utterly indifferent. I have hobbies, but my duties mean I have little time for them. I specialize in Saban and ninjutsu, Genma told his team. He lifted his arm to point at Itachi. You next. Itachi had an unsure look on his face, but nevertheless began to speak. My name is Uchiha Itachi. I don't like many things, nor do I hate many things. My hobbies include training and spending time with my friends. I specialize in ninjutsu, genjutsu and shurikenjutsu, and my nature affinity is katan. Next came Tri. My name is Uzumaki Tri. My likes include my family and friends. My hates are few but include a certain white-haired old man and perverts. My hobbies are the same as Itachi's, and I specialize in ninjutsu, fuinjutsu, pure speed, and I've aptitudes for medical ninjutsu, shurikenjutsu and genjutsu. My nature affinities are katan, futon and suiton. He got a confused look from Naruto at his mention of genjutsu, but he got a baffled look from Genma at his affinities. My name is Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. My likes are also my family and friends, and I don't yet hate anything. My hobbies are also training and spending time with my friends. I specialize in taijutsu and kenjutsu with aptitudes in medical ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. My nature affinities are Suiton, Doton, and Futon. Naruto had only just finished talking when Genma thrust a piece of chakra paper in the faces of both brothers. And sure enough, Tri's split down the middle, half burning, the other half becoming soggy. Naruto's also splitting down the middle, half becoming soggy and other half becoming dirt. Huh, what do you know, you actually do have 3 affinities each, the disbelief still evident in Genma's voice. Their sensei crossed his arms and closed his eyes. He was silent for several seconds before he opened his eyes again. Okay, now I want you 3 to explain. Explain how you display skill sets and ability far beyond what brand new genin should be capable of. Even the once-in-a-generation geniuses don't display such ability. The 3 looked at each other, and each nodded. Tri formed the clone seal, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique. And next to Tri appeared an identical clone who waved at Genma. You know of the Kage Bunshin's ability to transmit what it learns back to the original, the clone asked. Genma nodded in understanding. Okay, so you use Kage Bunshin to speed up the learning process. How many can you each create? I have the least chakra amongst us, but I can still create 6, and still be able to personally train effectively. I believe I will soon be able to maintain 7. Tri and Naruto, both being descendants of the Uzumaki clan, possess far greater chakra reserves. Naruto can currently maintain 25, and Tri, who had more chakra than anyone else I've ever met, can easily maintain over 40. But while I and Naruto do have more chakra to use, we both feel that Itachi has the potential to simply be a better shinobi than either of us. We can't think of why else he keeps up with our rate of learning so easily. Tri added. Internally Genma's mind was reeling. 6 to 7? 25? 40 plus? I'm only able to create 3 at any time. Explain your fuinjutsu skills, since you don't retain physical improvements when clones dispel. You are correct, sensei, but fuinjutsu is a combination of mental memory and muscle memory. Mental memory for learning about seals, muscle memory for drawing them. Similar to how you perform hand seals for a jutsu without having to think. They are intelligent as well as talented. Tri, where are you with your fuinjutsu? The Jonin asked, bracing himself for the reply. I'm currently at level 6, sensei. I believe I will be ready for level 7 soon, Tri responded. Who teaches you? Genma assumed it would be Minato and Kushina given their statuses as fuinjutsu masters. Again he found himself confused as Tri replied. Bar guidance from Hiruzen-sama, I teach myself, sensei. Again Genma was silent. He was having to take in so much information that didn't in any way seem true. If his saban weren't made of metal, he'd have bitten it in half by now. Genma had dismissed his genin team until tomorrow. He walked through the village in a half daze. They'd spent the day discussing what the 3 knew, so Genma wouldn't be wasting time trying to teach them something they already knew. Over the next fortnight or so he had expected to teach them tree climbing and squad formations. But he didn't have to. He hadn't intended to teach them how to manipulate elemental chakra at all, but he didn't have to do that either. The only thing he was sure he could pass on to them was experience. He only became aware of his surroundings again when he dropped himself into a sofa. Looking around, he quickly noticed he was in the Jonin waiting room. It was a large room filled with numerous sofas, many of which were occupied by Konoha Jonin who were passing the time in their own ways. With this room, it allowed Jonin to be easily findable if they were needed, most prominently in case of emergencies. Kakashi was on a sofa opposite him and as per usual had one of his Ika novels in hand, studying the masked man for a moment. He'd always wondered how he was able to read the thing properly while always paying attention to his surroundings, and make no mistake, he was paying attention. Perhaps that's why he rereads them constantly. He learns something new on each reread since he's splitting his attention. He was brought back to attention by a giggle from the very same man. Genma briefly shuddered before staring off into space again. It could have 5 minutes, it might have been 20, Genma didn't know. What he did know was that he was dragged back to reality by someone sitting down next to him. Looking to his left, he saw a grinning guy staring back at him. Genma looked ahead of him again. You knew, didn't you? You knew how good they are. Guy joined him in staring at the far wall. I did. Remarkable, aren't they? I knew words wouldn't quite be enough, so I let them display their fires of youth instead. While his eyes never left his book, Kakashi was listening to every word Genma and Guy said. He knew Genma had taken the Prodigal 3. He'd been offered them himself, but had immediately rejected the offer. In his own words, I don't have time to raise children. When the copycat ninja wasn't on a mission, he was usually Rizano's personal guard. Nonetheless, his fellow Jonin's words intrigued him. I wonder how good they are. Genma's not one to be easily impressed. I have to agree with you, Guy. They've been genin for barely a day and I'm already considering whether to forward them for the Chunin exams in Kumo next year. The necessary skill sets they already possess, all I can give them is advice and experience. You feel they can compete in the Chunin exams? Guy wondered. Yes, by the time they roll around I intend to have them desensitized. Guy nodded. The greatest problem for most genin competing in the Chunin exams is that they weren't used to killing. They were ninja, but they were still children. But while they were still children, they were ninja. Ginma, Jonin sensei for Genin Team 12 was heading for Konoha's main gate. It had been 3 months since he'd taken charge of his team, and he had to admit he'd enjoyed it. His team acted maturely in their tasks, took nothing for granted and didn't let up in their training despite their official duties. The past 12 weeks had seen Team 12 complete 21 D-rank and 2 C-rank missions alongside their substantial training regime which hadn't let up. They'd earned themselves a reputation for their exemplary professionalism and fast completion times. He'd not have to deal with the complaints that all new Genin seemed to have with D-rank missions, much to the ire of other Jonin sensei. He did feel that while Naruto wanted to complain about painting fences, pulling weeds, walking dogs and catching that infamous cat, he was kept in line by the other two. But despite Ginma's best efforts, his genin had yet to make their first kills. 1. Their C ranks went without incident, and he didn't want to risk a B rank. Which led the 4 of them to today. Today was his team's first mission that would take them out of Hai no Kuni. They were heading for Kaze no Kuni, more specifically they were heading for Sunagakure. Looking over at the departure/arrival station, his team was already assembled and awaiting his arrival. Walking up to them he started the pre-mission rituals for lack of a better word. Team, you've learned the details? Hi, Sensei. We're to ensure an important message from Konoha is safely delivered to Sunagakure. The message is deemed important enough to be sent via shinobi instead of messenger bird, thus an unofficial timescale of 4 days to arrive applies. Try stated, with his photographic memory, would know the mission inside out, objectives, timescale, targets, etc. Ginma nodded, turning his head to face Itachi. Route? Hi, Sensei. Our journey will be taking us to Sunagakure. To do so we need to travel through at least 1 minor nations. For obvious reasons it won't be Amagakure, so we'll be passing through Kawa no Kuni, land of rivers. To meet our timescale we'll need to move fast to allow for the bureaucracy of entering and leaving Kawa no Kuni. It was Itachi's job to plan the route to and from their destination. Naruto, threats and contingencies? Hi, Sensei. There shouldn't be any troubles getting to the border. There is, however, limited intelligence on potential problems inside Kawa no Kuni. We may have to be wary of bandits. There shouldn't be any issues inside Kaze no Kuni. Sunagakure is meticulous in dealing with bandits. Secondary routes are planned. Genma nodded approvingly. Very good, team. You are supplied long enough for this mission? Hi, Sensei. Mission length estimate of 6 to 9 days. We're supplied for 14, Tri stated. Excellent, let's get to it. Genma had the message sealed in a storage seal on his wrist, just one of the things his students had, in fact, taught him. And with that they departed, dispensing with walking in favor of breaking straight into a run. Before long they were jumping through the trees in a modified diamond formation. Naruto took point and also knew their route. Tri took the left while the first of his 2 shadow clones took the right. Itachi took the rear center to make the best use of his Sharingan. Genma hinged to look like Tri was the rear guard behind Itachi. Tri's second shadow clone hinged to look like Genma took the center. The formation continued westwards for hours before turning southwest. They were to cross at Kawa no Kuni's narrowest point separating Hai no Kuni and Kaze no Kuni. That would mean they'd be crossing relatively close to the Kawa no Kuni's/Amagakure's joint border. The land's hidden village, Tanagakure, village hidden in valleys, was also far to the south, so the chance of encountering bandits or missing Nin increased. By the time night came they were near the border. All 4 were able to create shadow clones, so 2 would take half-night watches with clones and they'd alternate with the other 2 the following night. The night was a quiet late spring night. Tri and Itachi had taken the first night's watch. Tri had relieved Itachi hours ago, and the sun would soon rise over the horizon. Tri was sat up a tree some 10 feet off the ground. He had 10 clones in a 100-foot circle surrounding their camp. Each clone had a piece of fine ninja wire tied around a finger. The wires were all attached to Tri's fingers and thumbs. A pull on any of them would alert him to any problems. With his hands palms down, 8 fingers from his left pinky to his right middle finger were assigned compass points. The final 2 were reserves closer to the camp. He could move them between the other 8. And that's exactly what was happening. The wire on his left ring finger was being lightly pulled. 1 short pull followed by 1 long pull meant 6 threats from the southwest. Then his left thumb started moving, 2 short pulls followed by 1 long pull, 7 more threats from the north. He pulled on his 2 clone reserves, 2 pulls sent 1 to the southwest and 5 sent the second to the north. While waiting for them to arrive, gather information and then dispel, he channeled chakra into a seal array on his left forearm, activating it. The seal was connected to 3 scrolls, each scroll was located right next to his sleeping teammates. The scrolls emitted a quiet, low-pitched buzz that would wake them. The scroll would also display the directions the threat was approaching from. The wire around his right ring finger went slack, meaning it had been cut. The clone would cut the wire to identify itself and then dispel, which it duly did. Tri was still sat in the tree unmoved as Itachi appeared next to him. As he did, Tri's second reserve clone dispelled. "What have you found?" "Bandits, 2 groups, 6 to the southwest, 7 to the north, both converging on the camp." "Okay, Tri, let them pass under you before you set off any traps." The Uzumaki just nodded as Itachi shunned Shine back to camp. It was the job of the other 3 to act unaware and draw them in. Itachi made himself look occupied. Genma was still in his tent while a shadow clone of Naruto was snoozing at the base of a tree. The real Naruto was on the other side of the camp up a tree. With a series of pulls on the wires, Tri recalled 4 of his clones to a tighter perimeter around the camp. With that he cut all the wires and made ready. "Boss, we see 3 of them in their camp. They look like ninja," Taki whispered. He was a small man with dirty blonde hair. His leader's name was simply Tan. Taki had always wondered why he'd chosen the name Tan, perhaps on account of his brown skin tone. Who knew? If they are ninja, then there should be a 4th. They operate in teams of 4. "We need to move quickly before the 4th one turns up. We've got the jump on the others." "Wait for the others to start the attack," Tan replied in a half growl, half whisper. None of them had noticed that they'd passed right under Tri, who was squatted down on a high branch. The ram seal formed, ready to detonate the explosive and flash bang tags. A few seconds later the group from the north rushed in the clearing, shouting and screaming. They thought they had the element of surprise. This line of thought continued, right up until one stepped on one of Itachi's explosive tags to the camp's north, which immediately detonated, launching the poor man into the air minus a leg. He was dead before he hit the floor. The other 6 were shocked to a standstill, and were immediately under attack as 3 ninja rushed them. Tan was angry at his assault being stopped so quickly. "All right, boys, let's finish them off. And be quick about it," the man shouted as his contingent charged out of the undergrowth with him leading the way. Tan only got about 6 feet before he too stepped on a tag. It didn't immediately explode, however, it did explode when Taki was running past it. The explosion launched him into a tree and Tan to the ground with great force. The first tag's explosion triggered the others, enveloping the other 4, killing them instantly. Tri dropped down out of the tree obscured by the smoke. They watched in horror as their comrade was launched through the air, his now detached leg going one way while the rest of him went another. There was no scream, but there was a fountain of blood and it seemed to coat everything they included. They were such a state of shock that 2 more died before they even came to their senses as a pair of saban embedded in the neck of one, and a tanto impaled the chest of another. The remaining 4 managed to pull themselves together and charge Naruto and Genma, only for several of Tri's clones to drop down amongst them, one of them driving a kunai deep into a bandit just above the collarbone. The man screamed as he collapsed. The blood squirted out of the wound as the blade struck an artery. The next to fall was killed by Itachi, a flurry of shurikens striking him in the chest. The 2 remaining managed to recover and defeat Tri's shadow clones before they reached Naruto, the first with a big overhead swing with his katana, the second coming at the blonde from the right. Naruto blocked the swing with his own tanto, but a wild horizontal swing from the second forced him back. Both bandits came forward clumsily, nearly bumping into one another. "They don't know how to fight together," he thought as their blades clashed again. Again he blocked an overhead swing. On this occasion, however, he was able to kick his opponent's standing leg at the knee. In a grunt of pain the man fell to one knee before he could look up again. Naruto kneed him in the face. He could feel his nose give way as it broke. He didn't have time to process the pain as Naruto ran him through with a tanto. Not having time to pull his blade out, he jumped back and unsheathed his second tanto. The sole survivor in front of him was shaking as he held his longer sword out in front of him. Naruto would never move as his opponent's throat was slashed open by a shuriken. Tan was face down in the dirt. His ears rang as he slowly managed to raise his head as the last of his northern contingent went down, grasping his throat. He could see the spray of red. With difficulty he looked behind him. His group of 6 were down. No one looked like they were getting up. A kick to the ribs rolled him onto his back. Before he could even try to get up, a knee over his chest held him down. Looking down at him was a boy. He couldn't have been older than 10. The child's face, framed by red and black, was emotionless. "Guess you're the 4th then. They sure start you young, don't they?" Tan managed to get out. Tri shrugged. "Comes with the territory," was the calm reply. "Now, are there any more of you, or just the 13? "What do you care?" Tan practically spat back. Tri pondered his retort for a moment. I guess you're right, I don't." Quicker than Tan could comprehend, a kunai opened his throat. Try didn't budge even as the blood splashed across his face and clothes. He continued to watch as the light left Tan's eyes. Only when they closed did he stand again. Itachi and Genma looked on, slightly unnerved as Try was painted red. Sensing their questions, Try shouted over to them, "I'm desensitizing myself to it all, rather now than when my life's on the line." Genma understood his reasoning. He didn't have to go overboard though. "Itachi, Try, see if we've any survivors and start piling the bodies." "Hi, Sensei," they both replied. Genma made his way to Naruto, who still hadn't moved. "You alright?" Naruto took a moment to register his sensei's voice. Why yeah, I'll be fine, Sensei." His head turned quickly when he felt a hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, the first is never pleasant," Genma reassured him. "If you need to be sick, then do so. You aren't the first, and you won't be the last," he added. As if he'd been waiting for leave to do so, he shot into the bushes. He left him be and picked up the nearest body. First, however, he had to pull Naruto's tanto out. It took a few minutes to pile 12 corpses up. Itachi were one short. It was only then that they noticed the form of Taki propped up against a tree. He was missing the lower half of his right leg and a hand. Itachi approached him and squatted down in front of him. "Do you want it to end?" he asked. A weak nod was all he received in reply. "Very well." Itachi, grabbing him by the hair, lifted Taki's head up to face him and quickly cut his throat. Within seconds the man stopped breathing. Waiting until the bleeding stopped, he dragged the final body over to the pile. "Okay, you two on 3. 1, 2, 3, Genma counted. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique," all three of them said, their collective fireballs igniting the corpses. With Naruto's return, Genma sat them all down. "So, how do you all feel?" he asked tentatively. Naruto had the look of someone who'd just be sick. Itachi's face had a green tint to it, and Try stared at the ground, no emotion on his face. "Sensei, does it get any easier?" "No, Naruto, it never really gets any easier. But you get used to it." Genma's answer was bluntly but truthfully spoken. "It's why we've taken as many C ranks as we have. I wanted to get you used to this. When you're ready for the Chunin exams. But tell me, how do you feel?" Itachi went first. "Not great, I want to pity them. But I know pity is one emotion I can have." "Correct, Itachi, pity is an emotion you cannot have. Pity will get you killed." His sensei's blunt reply made Itachi wince slightly. "Sensei, I feel sick." I looked one in the eyes after I'd ran him through with my tanto. "As I've said before, it's normal to feel as you are right now on your first kills. General advice, however, don't look them in the eyes while they die." Genma then cast his gaze on Try, "Which brings us to you, Try. I know you deliberately looked him in the eyes." "I don't feel anything, Sensei. I don't feel pity, remorse, anger, disgust, guilt, nor sick. Nothing in that in itself doesn't feel right." Yet again his red and black-haired genin perplexed him. He'd never come across a genin that experienced no emotion under such circumstances. "Alright, I want you each to know that you did well. Now get cleaned up and we'll get going. We should reach Kana no Kuni by midday." Genma went to patrol the perimeter just to make sure it was secure. He quickly came across several of Try's lookout clones still active. He was telling the truth, big emotional pulls tend to dispel clones. Back in the camp, Itachi and Try were quickly able to clean and change clothes. Try even having the presence of mind to use Sueton and Katan to make hot water for them. Naruto, however, had hardly moved. Again a hand on his shoulder brought him back to reality. "You understand it was either you or him, yes?" At Naruto's silent nod, Try continued, "Besides, I don't fancy explaining to Ka-chan how I let you get yourself killed by a bandit," he joked. He succeeded in getting a small smile out of his brother. It took them nearly half an hour to clean and break camp. The corpses, for the most part, had been reduced to ash, their equipment retrieved and that of their opponents disposed of. "Sensei, perhaps in light of the morning's events, might I suggest a change in formation?" "Elaborate, Try." "For today at the least, adopt a line formation. I take point, Itachi second, Naruto third, and you on rear guard, Sensei. I'll line each flank with 3 shadow clones." Genma considered his proposal a moment before nodding in agreement. Naruto and Itachi are still coming to terms, their concentration will likely suffer as a result. "Okay, for today we'll change to the line formation, but the rear 2 clones will be mine." Try nodded, dispelling the rest of his previous clones and creating 4 new ones. He gave clones just enough chakra to complete their tasks. His lookouts were spent, thus dispelled. And with that they were off again, jumping through the trees. As Genma had anticipated, they reached the border just before midday as the great forests of Hai no Kuni gave way to the vast valleys and plains of Kana no Kuni. Passport checks were quicker than expected, and after a quick lunch they continued, running over the endless grasslands only occasionally broken up by fir and pine trees. The wind unbroken by the forests was stronger too. The northern regions of Kana no Kuni was relatively devoid of much more than villages and small towns given the proximity to Amigakure. The major cities and the hidden village were much further south. There were only a certain number of border crossings between Kana no Kuni and Kaze no Kuni, thus they were soon turning south-southwest to reach the nearest one. And by late afternoon they reached the border town. After again clearing passport control, they decided to keep going until nightfall. Doing so ensured they'd reach Sunagakure the following afternoon. Okay team, we'll be camping here tonight. We're on one of the main roads to Suna, which is patrolled heavily, so don't wander off and don't antagonize their patrols should any come by. They camped at the base of an outcrop of rock to better shelter them from the wind. And as planned, Ginma and Naruto took their turns on watch, not that the blonde could sleep much anyway. They were in the desert proper now, and as the sun rose the following day, so did the temperature. Gah, this heat is unbearable, a weary Naruto griped as they set off once more. The night, and thankfully the morning, had passed without incident. Don't worry Naruto, it's still only morning, it'll keep getting worse until midday, tried Deadpan. Ginma got a laugh as Naruto's face dropped at his brother's words. And just as Tri had said, the heat got worse and worse. By the time they stopped just past midday to rest and cool down, the sweat was pouring off all four of them. And throughout the whole ordeal, Naruto had complained constantly, so much so that Tri decided to do something about it. Bringing a finger to his lips, signaling Itachi and Ginma to keep quiet, he channeled chakra to his feet to silence his footsteps. He slowly crept up behind Naruto, who was stabbing a kunai in the sand and was still complaining. Now in place, Tri formed the dog seal. His chest expanded, and soon the silence of the desert was shattered by a startled scream as Tri unleashed a torrent of water right on top of Naruto. The blonde spluttered and thrashed around as his brain processed what had just happened. Itachi had a wide smile. Ginma laughed while Naruto scowled at his brother. Tri, what the hell? He shouted. Baka, because I tired of hearing your whining and moaning about being thirsty again or how it's too hot. You can mold Suiton chakra. You could have easily solved both just by creating water in your stomach with your chakra. Tri shot back. Naruto had at least had the dignity to look slightly embarrassed as he had the answer to his problems literally dumped on top of him. Kami, and they made you a genin, Tri joked at his brother's expense. Immediately the blonde's scowl returned. Alright you two, get ready. I want to reach Sunagakure sometime today, and we won't if you two start trying to turn the desert into an oasis. Within minutes they were off again. It didn't take for the sun to dry Naruto out. Another hour or two later, Ginma slowed them to a regular walk. Okay, we walk from here. We don't want to spook the sentries by running at them full speed. And we definitely don't want to cause an international incident involving 2 children of the Hokage. So all of you better behave. Now it's your first time in another hidden village. You're going to stick out as Konoha shinobi, so the civilians are going to stare. And the shinobi will be watching you constantly. Will any try to antagonize us, sensei? Itachi asked. Some might, they'll likely be younger though, genin like you. The older Chunin and Jonin might recognize the resemblance between Naruto and Hokage-sama and think better of it. That and they're supposed to be adults, their sensei answered. Oh, and we'll likely be staying overnight and departing in the morning, he quickly added. Without another word, they continued towards the main entrance to Sunagakure. The village was surrounded by a massive circular wall of rock that shielded the village from most of the sandstorms. It also meant that there was one way in and one way out thanks to a single cleft in the cliffs of stone. It took another 10 minutes or so before they reached the entrance. The cliffs towered over them. Before they could go any further, a Suna shinobi stepped forward. Konoha shinobi, present your passports and state your business in Sunagakure. Ginma handed over his and his team's passports. Your names? Shirani Ginma. Uzumaki Tri. Uchiha Itachi. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto. The final name caught the Suna off guard. It wasn't every day the son of the Yondaime Hokage showed up outside another hidden village. Are you really? Another Sunanin said rhetorically. Certainly has the same hair. Now your purpose in Sunagakure? The first, a Chunin replied. We were tasked to deliver a message from the Hokage to the Kazekage, Ginma stated, not really wanting to waste time chit-chatting. You, the first said to another nin, go check whether the Kazekage is waiting on a delivered message from Konoha. Hi, the nin replied as she immediately ran through the cleft towards the Kazekage's tower. Ginma internally groaned while Tri, who figuring it would take a while, simply sat down on a small mound of sand. Channeling chakra into a storage seal made 2 books appear in his hand. He quickly formed the clone seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and next to him appeared a clone that he handed a book to. Both began reading to the bewilderment of the gathered Suna shinobi. Shadow clones, not bad for a gaki, a Sunanin commented. Tri's little display had even drawn the attention of a Suna Jonin. Even figured out the memory retention when they dispelled to speed up learning. So where'd you learn that then, Gaki? Your sensei teach ya? No, I taught myself, It's a remarkably easy technique to learn, you just need the chakra for it, Try replied, not even looking up from his book. Off in the distance they could hear a couple of voices that were slowly getting louder. You know, it's rude to not look at someone when they're talking to you, the Jonin verbally jabbed. She was trying to get a reaction out of him. Genma knew it, Itachi knew it, Naruto, all the other Sunanin, but most importantly so did Try. With a little sigh, he created another shadow clone, this time without hand seals, and handed his book to it. He looked up at the Jonin. Yes, Suna-san? He said in a totally calm voice. She narrowed her eyes at him. She hadn't expected the reaction he gave her. Calm one, aren't you, Gaki? I suppose I am, Suna-san. But tell me, is it not rude to not use someone's name when talking to them? Again his voice was calm. I suppose that is true, Try-san, but I don't really feel like telling you my name. A slight smile slowly appeared on his face. That's quite all right, I don't need to ask Pakura-san. The woman was taken aback, the surprise evident on her face. A face of fair skin with pupilless brown eyes, her hair was tied in a bun and was completely green but for an orange bang either side of her face. Her attire consisted of a sleeveless, backless top and short tight pants with an obi around her waist and purple arm warmers that reached the shoulders. Her outfit was completed with bandages around her tights and ankles. Right now I imagine you're wondering how I know your name. Try created another shadow clone which immediately hinged into a book. He tossed the book towards Pakura, which she effortlessly caught. Page 76, Try instructed her. She opened the book to the page and read. It's Konoha's bingo book, Pakura-san, I know every entry in it. Why did you make a clone into the bingo book? Itachi asked. Try briefly laughed. In case she didn't feel like returning it, we technically aren't allowed to hand Konoha's bingo book to shinobi of other villages. To make his point, he clicked his fingers and the book in Pakura's hands disappeared in a puff of smoke, as did one of his two reading clones. Try retrieved the dropped book and began reading once more. The voices that they could hear off in the distance had drawn closer. They could now be identified as a Suna Genin team returning from a mission. The Chunin who'd stopped them let out an exacerbated groan. Konohanin, I ask you to be patient with these three, they entirely too fond of running their mouths, he warned them. As they came closer they could pick up some of their comments, the same full of bluster and bravado comments that nearly all Genin seemed to make. That mission was too easy for me. I can take on Missing Ninja, no problem. I'm ready for the Chunin exams. I could beat Sasori himself. Many of the assembled nin, Konoha included, cringed at the last comment. Sasori was an S-rank missing nin. He was regarded as the best puppeteer in the world, was certainly not going to be bested by a genin that talked too much. The border guard stepped forward. Identify yourselves, he ordered. Suta Nobiru, Jonin Sensei, Team 13, returning from completed assignment. The guard opened a large book and began searching for the team. It was going so well. Then one of the genin noticed the Konoha Hitaides and attires. You need a hand keeping out the riff-raff, Agard-san? One of them sneered while his teammates snickered. The assembled Sunanin, Pakura included, internally groaned. A confrontation was now seemingly inevitable. But none of them replied. Try read his book. Itachi span a kunai around a finger while looking off into the distance, while Naruto stood stock still, arms folded and eyes closed. Seeing he wasn't going to get a reply, the genin decided to keep talking. Seems you know to keep quiet amongst your superiors, the disdain evident in his voice. Not really, we just don't feel like talking to you. You're rather rude, Naruto replied in a calm voice that made Genma smirk. The blonde gave him nothing to come back on, nothing to insult, so he searched for an easier target. Skipping their Jonin, he turned to Itachi. Before he could say a word, he found a pair of 3 Tomo Sharingan staring back at him. He immediately thought better of insulting an Uchiha. Which left him one other option. A black and red-haired boy sat on a sand dune alongside a replica, both reading a book. He walked up to Try. What's your deal? You so dumb you need to read the same book twice? He loudly proclaimed, snatching the book from Try's hand. Try smiled slightly, which made Naruto laugh. He quickly looked at Naruto before sneering again. See, even your teammate agrees, he mocked, turning back to face Try. When he did, however, he found that the book was gone and Try was reading it again, which only made Naruto laugh harder. What's so funny, Blondie? A second genin asked with her nasally voice. After taking a few seconds to calm himself down, he replied, Oh, it's nothing really, it's just that my brother doesn't like people messing with his Fuinjutsu books. She looked at Naruto, then at Try before snorting. You both have the same 2 parents? Yes, Naruto replied, narrowing his eyes, his voice carrying an edge to it. You don't look anything alike, you know. Perhaps you should ask your mom again. The silence that followed was deafening. Itachi's kunai stopped spinning. Faces on the Sunanin paled at her insinuation, yet the 2 brothers looked totally calm. The shit-eating grin on her face slowly faded as she took in the reactions of everyone else. Try snapped his book shut, took the second book back, dispelled the clone and sealed them away before standing. Despite how angry Tri could get at Kushina for ignoring Naruto, and himself he utterly adored his Ka-chan. It was her words that gave him the life he now had. And right now Tri was angry. Naruto had been leaking killing intent ever since the comment was made, but that was utterly swamped as it rolled off of Tri in waves. The Suna trio were terrified. Some of the older Nin found themselves taking a step back. Ginma was concerned that a fight was about to break out. Oh, thank Kami, he thought as he spotted the returning runner dispatched to validify their presence. Coming to a stop next to the Chunin guard, yep, the Kazekage is waiting on a message from Konoha. Excellent, Ginma said loudly, clapping his hands. Then we'll take our leave. Try, Naruto, Itachi, let's go, he quickly added, absolute authority in his voice, wanting to get his genin away before they put someone in the hospital. In an instant the killing intent ceased. Hi, sensei, the three uttered. The Chunin guard only nodded as the four Konoha Nin walked past him. After they'd left, the Suna Jonin sensei came up to him. He'd seen the looks on his comrade's face. Who were they? He asked. The two your genin just insulted our sons of the Yondaime Hokage. The Jonin suddenly felt sick as he pieced together just who the woman his genin had slandered was. Pakura also took the opportunity to slip away as the Jonin was left with three genin shaking like leaves in the wind. Kazekage's office. I thank you and your team for getting this here as quickly as you have. I wasn't expecting you here until tomorrow, Raza. The Yondaime Kazekage thanked the four Konoha shinobi stood in front of him. Thank you, Kazekage-dano, thanked Ginma, bowing slightly. Raza had finished writing his reply and was placing it inside an envelope. If you see my assistant outside, she'll see to your accommodation for the evening, he said, handing the sealed envelope to Ginma. Thank you, Kazekage-dano, Ginma repeated, he and his team bowing before seeing themselves out. Raza leaned his chin on his hands as he watched them leave. So those two are yours, said Minato. Interesting. Having shut the door, Ginma turned to find the assistant right in front of him. She held out an unsealed envelope and gave him a smile. Your accommodation is in the envelope. The rooms are under your name, Shirani-san. Thank you, he sheepishly replied. It had been a few hours since they'd left the Kazekage's office. They had checked into their hotel and had gone out for something to eat. Now they were on their way back to their rooms. Tri himself was passing his gaze over the rooftops of the many buildings around them until he spotted what he was looking for. Ginma-sensei, he said, getting the Jonin's attention. Yes, Tri? Might I be excused, there's something I'd like to do before turning in. Ginma surveyed his genin for a moment, rolling the senbon in his mouth before nodding. All right, but don't be long. He got a nod in return before Tri walked off in another direction. As soon as Tri was out of sight, he shined on top of a nearby building. Thank you for taking the time to meet me. There's a matter I'd like your advice on, he asked as a figure walked out of the shadows. Ginma was finishing off his latest mission report. Kami, I hate these things, he thought, giving it a quick once-over before handing it and getting a brief thank you from the Chunin on duty in the mission hall, and received 4 small sealed packages in return. He and his team had completed another C rank, bringing Team 12's total to 17, alongside the 53 D ranks. It had been a good year. Their latest mission had seen them escort a merchant from Konoha to the Kaminari no Kuni, Land of Lightning, border. The mission had taken them through 2 minor nations and had taken several weeks. And Ginma was of the opinion that it would be the